Chapter 1453. It's quite exciting. Junior brother, get ready to enjoy it. Changyu smiled meaningfully. You've been in the sect for 2 years. In these 2 years, you've comprehended a lot of unique skills. While your cultivation has increased, you also need to train. The Illusory Palace is a special place set up to train the disciples. It's the cruelest place in the Divine Palace. Perhaps it's a little early for you to open the Illusory Palace. However, due to the fact that the average talent of this batch of disciples is relatively strong, and next year, your senior brothers will also reach the peak of their cultivation and step into the outside world. In order to let you all take charge of things in advance, entering the Illusory Palace a few years in advance is not a bad thing. Tian Quan jumped down from the table, put his hands behind his back, and walked back and forth in the hall. He and the 6 Peak Masters had discussed for a long time whether to open the trial. In the end, the 5 Peak Masters agreed and decided to hold it in advance. While the Illusory Palace is testing you, it's also a job exchange with the older disciples. After the trial, the control of each peak will be stricter. At the end of the year, the 7 Peaks martial arts competition will be held to decide the next chief disciple and second chief disciple of each peak. Tian Quan turned around and smiled at Qin Hao. But don't feel too much pressure. Once Eastern Sky and Changyu leave, I'll only have you as my disciple. The chief disciple of the Migres Palace will be yours. In the future, I'll rely on you to support me in my old age. Ha! In a year, all the senior brothers will leave. Qin Hao's heart was in turmoil. Not only Eastern Sky and Changyu, but also the older disciples of the peaks would leave, and the sect would be reduced by half. Those who left would re-enter the world. They had been cultivating in the Divine Palace for hundreds of years, waiting for this day. After entering the secular world, these powerhouses of the Divine Palace would stir up the wind and clouds. With a flip of their hand, they could create clouds and rain with a flip of their hand. They enjoyed supreme glory and made the world tremble. Although Qin Hao had only been in the sect for 2 years, he had been very happy. Suddenly separated from the senior brothers of the peaks, he couldn't help but feel a little reluctant. Don't be sad. Changyu and I are only leaving temporarily. Xintian Peaks Tian Ke, Mizar Peaks Zhan Xiong, and Shanghua and Shimu are the same. After dealing with the affairs of the secular world, we will come back. Eastern Sky patted Qin Hao's shoulder. As personal disciples of the Peak Masters, they were very different from the second-class and third-class disciples of the Divine Palace. Low-level disciples entering the secular world might never return to the Divine Palace. People like Eastern Sky shouldered the mission of passing on the Divine Palace. When the life force of the senior members of the Divine Palace was exhausted, they needed to take over the position of Peak Master from the Peak Masters, extend the life of the Divine Palace, and then cultivate the next generation of successors. What's more, once a cultivator entered the realm of Great Emperor, their mentality would be detached from the mundane world. In their eyes, the power and glory of the outside world were nothing more than fleeting clouds. But if he did not come back, the Divine Palace would not force him. Since everyone had their own ambitions, this parting would be forever. True Lord Migres's cultivation had almost reached the limit of the mortal world's martial artists. Although Qin Hao did not know how strong his cultivation was, he knew that as long as he did not enter the divine realm, he still could not escape the fate of the heavenly Tao Samsara. Death was only a matter of time, and Eastern Sky was the next true Lord Migres. I envy the 2 senior brothers. Why don't you take me with you when you leave? I'm quite homesick. Qin Hao chuckled. Smack! Old man Migres jumped up and slapped Qin Hao's head heavily. You haven't stepped into the Great Emperor realm yet, and you want to embarrass me by running out? You want to leave in a hurry after entering the sect for 2 years? You think too much. At least cultivate to the realm of Changyu. Then I might consider letting you go. Can't you be gentler? You almost knocked me out. Qin Hao rubbed his head. He was too heavy-handed. Then he asked Changyu, second senior brother, which stage of the Great Emperor realm have you cultivated to now? The Great Emperor realm that Qin Hao referred to was naturally the realm of the Great Emperor, not the ordinary Great Emperor. Ordinary Great Emperors in the outside world were divided into 9 stars. When 9 stars were perfected, one could become a great emperor. But within the great emperor realm, there were several mysterious levels. Every time one broke through a level, their strength would skyrocket. In his previous life, Qin Hao cultivated to the 3rd realm of the great emperor realm. But after the 3rd realm, there should be even higher realms. Unfortunately, Qin Hao didn't have the chance to take that step at that time, and unfortunately died in the god-slaying formation. Now, he had entered the Divine Palace for 2 years. So far, he still didn't know the true cultivation levels of Eastern Sky and Changyu. I just entered the Great Emperor realm of Nirvana. Changyu smiled. Great Emperor Nirvana. Qin Hao's expression was exaggerated. A drop of sweat dripped down from his cheek. Great Emperor Nirvana, 4th level Great Emperor realm. Old Changyu's appearance was harmless, and he looked very amiable. His cultivation level was so terrifying, even stronger than Qin Hao in his previous life. One could imagine how Dinda felt at this moment. What are you looking at? I'm just at the perfected Nirvana realm. Eastern Sky glanced at Qin Hao and said, I'm still some distance away from Master. Perfected Nirvana realm. Qin Hao clutched his chest and felt a little difficult to breathe. He then looked at perfected cultivator Tian Quan. What cultivation level would Master be at? Sai, I've been stuck at the extreme Nirvana realm for 400 years. I feel that I don't have much time left. Maybe I won't have the chance to take that step. Tian Quan looked up at the roof with a melancholy face. Extreme Nirvana realm. Qin Hao felt as if a fist was stuffed in his throat. He was almost suffocating. Master's cultivation was slightly higher than Eastern Sky's. Was the extreme Nirvana realm the limit of the Great Emperor realm? In other words, Master was only a hair's breadth away from the Supreme Tao. Don't look at us so exaggeratedly. In the future, your achievements will definitely be higher than mine and senior brother. Changyu said this sentence very seriously. However, Qin Hao wasn't happy at all. He lowered his head and whispered, I don't know what the future will be, but I know that if Master really wants to trap me until I reach the Nirvana realm before letting me go, the continent will be turned upside down. What did you say? Tian Quan asked. Nothing. Master, you're wise and powerful. You've reached the extreme Nirvana realm. As long as you take a step forward, my God, our Divine Palace will have another immortal realm expert after Ancestor Martial Lord. It's really worth celebrating, huh? Qin Hao said with a big grin. It's not that easy, but you should give up. You want to leave with Eastern Sky? It's impossible. This time, I won't let you go even if you make the sky bloom. Tian Quan's face was serious. It seemed that he was extremely determined. Sai, it's over. Qin Hao covered his face with both hands. Junior brother, don't be discouraged. In this trial, if you can take the flag and bring it back intact, you can make a wish to the peak masters of the 7 peaks. As long as it doesn't violate the Tao of heaven and earth, Master and the other martial uncles will not refuse. Eastern Sky brought Qin Hao good news. Flag? Qin Hao raised his head and said in surprise, Is it a token of the trial? Ahem. Tian Quan looked at Eastern Sky. Training is training. Don't deliberately break the rules and leak gossip just because you're my disciple. This is cheating, and it's unfair to the disciples of the other 6 peaks. Master, you're too strict with Junior brother. When we were in the trial, you personally told us the news and helped us get the flag. Eastern Sky said. Qin Hao was stunned. They were all disciples. Why was Tian Quan so harsh to him? He allowed Eastern Sky and Changyu to cheat, but couldn't he help his little disciple a little? Why did it become fair in front of Qin Hao? If only senior sister was still here. Qin Hao whispered to Eastern Sky with a sad look in his eyes. Dong Tian's body trembled, and he said seriously, Master, Junior apprentice brother is alone on Migres Peak, and the other 6 peaks are all in packs of tigers and wolves. Even Martial Uncle Yun Yi, who has the least number of disciples, has 27 disciples. Ning Tianxing and Qi Yuan's talent is not bad. Do you have the heart? Okay, I'm tired. Do whatever you want. Tian Quan turned around and walked to the back hall with his 2 short legs. He couldn't hear anything after that. Even if the 6 peak masters knew, it would be Eastern Sky's fault. It had nothing to do with him. Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, come, let's talk. What's going on with the flag of the illusory palace? If I get the flag, can I make a wish to master and the 6 martial uncles to leave the divine palace? Can I take some people with me? I need help. Also, where is the flag hidden? How can I get it? Qin Hao asked a series of questions. If you get the palace flag, you can naturally make a wish to the 7 peak masters. If you just want to take a few people with you, firstly, it doesn't violate the laws of heaven and earth, and secondly, it's within the power of the 7 peak masters. They have no reason to refuse. Eastern Sky smiled. But junior brother, this flag is not easy to get. Chang Yu's face was slightly twisted. Recalling the trial of the illusory palace they participated in, it was bloody. Chang Yu and Dong Tian Xiangxiang joined forces, and after a narrow escape, they barely managed to obtain the palace flag. And this time, the entire Migres Hall only had Qin Hao. It could be imagined that the difficulty would be even greater. Before talking about the flag, let's talk about the illusory palace. Junior brother, the illusory palace is far more terrifying than you think. It is full of madness, killing, and all kinds of evil in the world. Even many tragedies that you have never heard of in the outside world can be presented in front of you in the illusory palace. Eastern Sky was still in awe of the 2 words, the illusory palace. Although the illusory palace was only a trial ground, its interior was incomparably real. The formation of the illusory palace was formed by Yun E Peak spreading out a magnetic field, Yun E True Monarch being the eye of the array, and the other 6 peak masters infusing dilly into it. The price of opening, it was almost 80% of the yuan chi of the 7 peaks peak masters and an inestimable amount of heaven-grade spirit stones. In short, the price was very high. Moreover, every time the illusory palace was opened, it would usher in the weakest stage of the divine palace. But everything was for the sake of making the new disciple stronger. Using martial Uncle Yun Yi's Dao to form the array, it will consume 80% of the dilly from Master and the other martial uncles to open the illusory palace. When the time comes, the disciples of the 7 peaks will enter and reach another world. That world has people, demonic beasts, and cities. It is no different from the outside world. Of course, there is also mutual deception, the mantis stalking the cicada, and it would not be surprising to see a bloodbath in a city. Of course, all the creatures there are not real people, but illusions condensed by the vast dilly of the 7 peak masters through the array of Yuni Peak. It is more appropriate to call them puppets. The terrifying thing is that it is too real. When people are injured, they will bleed and die. Every creature has its own independent thought and is exactly the same as the martial artists of the outside world. They are also proficient in calculation and can improve themselves. They have a strong offensive power, and some of them are very strong. Once you enter the illusory palace, you will return to the secular world. Don't be merciful. Talking about kindness in the illusory palace will harm you. Once you enter the city, you can settle down. Between the cities, there are often massacres. If you see someone crying for help, even if it is the weak old people or children, don't care. In short, it is fine as long as you are alive. Eastern Sky said, as your senior brother, I will give you a word of advice. Don't trust anyone, even if you meet a disciple of the Divine Palace. Although the peak masters of the 7 peaks used Dilly to open the illusory palace, they can't affect the situation inside. To put it bluntly, if you really die inside, it is because your skills are not as good as others. Chang Yu's expression was very solemn. The only hope for survival was to not trust anyone, including former acquaintances. Because some creatures can imitate the appearance of people you know. They can get close to you, win your trust, seize your soul, and then live in your place and replace you as a disciple of the Divine Palace. Remember, this is our advice to you. Eastern Sky poked Qin Hao's heart with his finger. Chapter 1454. When the finger touched his heart, it seemed to pierce through Qin Hao's soul, causing him to tremble suddenly. The illusory palace was terrifying. Just from a description of the 2 senior brothers, it was enough to see how terrible the illusory palace was. When one experienced it personally, the level of danger would be even higher. It would be unforgettable and unforgettable. Qin Hao couldn't help but sigh at the cultivation of the Seven Peaks Peak Masters. The vast Dili Palace was integrated into the array to create a lifelike illusory palace trial ground. The creatures inside the illusory palace had independent thoughts and could enhance their individual cultivation through cultivation. They were no different from the living people outside. It was a divine skill. When these 7 ultimate Nirvana realm great emperors joined forces and combined their strength, they were probably equivalent to a half-step divine level existence. Amazing, Qin Hao said. Since your cultivation has grown, you must undergo a cruel tempering. The flowers cultivated in a greenhouse cannot withstand the wind and frost. Even if you are the strongest group of geniuses in the continent today, the 2 years of comfortable life in the Divine Palace have worn away many of your spirit. After entering the illusory palace, you will experience the feeling of the secular world again, awaken the blood in your body, and find the decisiveness to kill. In the back hall, the loud voice of Migres came. The trial was extremely cruel, and many disciples of the various peaks had died in the illusory palace. But the survival of the fittest was the law of nature. Only after experiencing the baptism of blood and fire could one truly bear the name of a disciple of the Divine Palace. Hey, didn't you leave? Qin Hao looked back. Ahem, the real me is meditating. The current me is a fake. You can continue, just pretend that I don't exist. Migres responded. Eastern Sky smiled. Junior brother, in the last trial, Chang Yu and I suffered a lot. In the illusory palace, some of the native creatures are extremely tyrannical, and there is no lack of Emperor Realm existences. Remember, do what you can. Okay, Qin Hao nodded. I will be careful. He was the only disciple in this batch of Migres Palace disciples. If something were to happen to him, who would take care of old man Migres? Qin Hao could also tell that the Emperor-level cultivator in Eastern Sky's words was definitely not an ordinary Emperor Yuan. He must be like the older disciples of the Divine Palace. His foundation must be extremely deep, and he must have more than one soul force. Such an opponent was indeed difficult to deal with. However, 2 years ago, Qin Hao defeated the previous pseudo-emperor Yu Hui as a new disciple. As long as he paid more attention, it shouldn't be too much of a problem for him to meet the real Emperor Yuan. After all, in the past 2 years, Qin Hao's strength had also improved. What about the Gongqi? What's up with it? Qin Hao asked. The palace flag is a kind of trial token. There's nothing special about it. Find it and bring it back to Wuk intact. You can make a wish to the 7 Peak Masters. However, junior brother, the hiding place of the palace flag is uncertain. It might be in a swamp, in an abyss, in the sea, in a river, or in a lava cave. It might even be in the hands of a powerful creature at the level of a city lord. If you want to obtain the palace flag, apart from being strong enough, you also have to rely on luck. Zhang Yu sighed. Back then, eldest senior brother and I searched for it for half a year. Unexpectedly, the palace flag was with the daughter of a city lord. She treated it as her personal belonging and carried it everywhere with her. In the end, eldest senior brother sacrificed his body. Eastern Sky's face fell. Ahem. In short, junior brother, I wish you good luck. Don't follow an eldest senior brother's footsteps. Otherwise, you can only wait until the wedding night before you have a chance to make a move. Speaking of this, Zhang Yu's tone became a little wretched. He leaned closer and whispered into Qin Hao's ear, if junior brother likes violence, just drag her to a place where there's no one around. This is the most direct solution. Boom! An invisible force fell and hit the top of Zhang Yu's head, immediately smashing out a bulging meat lump. Don't teach Xiao some bad ideas. Be careful that he loses himself and becomes intoxicated with the women of the illusory palace, sinking forever. Old man Migres's shout echoed in the hall. Disciple knows his mistake. Zhang Yu quickly lowered his head. Hey, master, you haven't left yet? Qin Hao said, and also rolled his eyes at Zhang Yu. He was a dignified gentleman. How could he use such a despicable method? However, if Han was not here, he could give it a try. But It was definitely not to lust after women, but to save time and get the palace flag as soon as possible. Junior brother, don't learn bad things from Zhangyu. Some creatures are born good. Although they are illusory, it is easy to develop feelings for them if you have too much contact with them. At that time, you won't be willing to leave the illusory palace and return to reality. Eastern Sky reminded him. Every time a disciple entered the illusory palace, in addition to accidental deaths, many people would fall into power and lust. This was also one of the more terrible things about the illusory palace. Unknowingly, one would develop feelings for the native creatures. Although they knew it was fake, many disciples of the Divine Palace were willing to fall into the dream created by the formation. Senior brother, don't tell me you fell in love with the daughter of the city lord? Qin Hao laughed. You should get ready. There is still a month, so it's best to improve your strength. Zhang Yu and I have been in the Divine Palace for 10 years and cultivated to the level of pseudo-emperor before ushering in the trial of the illusory palace. You have only been in the sect for 2 years, and you can't wait for this disaster. It's really unfortunate. Eastern Sky got up and left. Did he fall in love? Maybe, because until now he still remembered her name, Song Wanqing. Chapter 1455. Translator. Nioibo, Studio Editor. Nioibo, still entering the illusory palace, the creatures of the illusory palace, who ate dilly, had spiritual consciousness. They existed because of the array, but in the end, it was an illusion. The disciples of the Divine Palace rotated every few hundred years. Every time the disciples entered the array, the scene was different. Song Wanqing naturally would not appear in front of Qin Hao. When the array was lifted, everything in the illusory palace was destroyed. But she would forever live in Eastern Sky's memory and become a beautiful memory. As for what would happen when Qin Hao entered the illusory palace, no one could predict. 1 month later, the disciples of the 7 peaks gathered in the Uni-Peak Training Hall. In the training hall, the peak masters stood side by side. The first seat, second seat, and elders were all present. The upper echelons were gathered. Just the great emperors alone numbered dozens. The number of ordinary emperor-level disciples was more than 200. The training hall was filled with an overwhelming aura, sweeping through like a torrent. Such a shocking lineup stunned the new disciples. It was the first time they had seen the Divine Palace's emperor-level figures gathered together. This magnificent scene was worthy of being at the top of the pyramid of the Divine Wilderness continent. If the Divine Palace had entered the world, no one would dare to doubt it. At this time, Qin Hao was in the training hall. Because he was the direct disciple of a peak master, he stood in the conspicuous first row. The other direct disciples of the peak masters also stood in the first row. However, unlike the others, Qin Hao was the only one in the Migrez Hall. He seemed very lonely. There was no one around him. The other peaks had at least 2 or 3 direct disciples. Most of them were from the Daozong Hall. Xiao Han, Zhou Wudao, Shou Wuk, Ke Feng Qianli, Zheng Qingqi, Yu Qianyang, Qian Ning, and so on. It could be said that there were a lot of talents. In terms of numbers and aura, the Daozong Peak completely defeated the other 6 peaks of the Divine Palace. There are so many people in the Daozong Hall. Qin Hao's eyes were filled with envy. If they fought, even if the 6 peaks joined forces, they might not be able to gain an advantage in the Daozong Hall. Retracting his gaze, Qin Hao looked at the 7 peak masters. He glanced at them one by one, and finally stopped at a woman. This woman's aura was extremely powerful. It was even more profound than Eastern Sky's, and wasn't much weaker than Master Migrez's. She was wearing a blood-red dress and a red crown. She gave off a sharp feeling. There was an eye-catching flower pattern on her dress. Qin Hao opened his red lotus fiery eyes and looked carefully. He saw a forging hammer imprinted in the flower pattern. She is the Xian Tian Immortal Lord, Tian K's master, the master of Xian Tian Peak. Qin Hao thought. Qin Hao had seen Empress Xian Tian in the Hidden Dragon's secret realm. Her attire and the flower badge that symbolized Xian Tian Palace were exactly the same as the one he had seen on Empress Xian Tian. This proved that the two came from the same master, and their identities were similar. Empress Xian Tian, who had died in the Hidden Dragon's secret realm, was most likely the peak master of Xiantian Peak. As if sensing Qin Hao's gaze, the Xiantian immortal lord looked over. At that moment, a vast spiritual energy raged and entered Qin Hao's eyes, causing intense pain. Qin Hao quickly looked away and smiled embarrassedly. Disciple of Migre's palace, junior brother Qi's relative in the outside world. Tian Ke, who was behind the Xiantian immortal lord, said, "He's a little bold." The profound heaven immortal lord said expressionlessly, "Even if he was a disciple of Migre's, he should not look at her so unscrupulously." Even Dong Tian had never looked at her from the front. Junior brother Qin is talented, so of course he's bold. Tian Ke smiled. After the illusory palace, let him mind more, the Xiantian immortal lord said coldly. At that moment, Qin Hao felt a chill run down his spine. Who did he offend? Ahem. Little guys, today you're about to face the cruelest training ground in the Divine Palace. As for the details of the illusory palace, each peak's chief and second peak should have already explained it to you in advance. I don't need to say more, right? The master of the Divine Palace, Migres, said. Although his body was small, the aura of the Nirvana Great Emperor was incomparably majestic. Palace Lord, we will not disappoint you. In the training ground, more than 700 disciples shouted in unison, their voices shaking the heavens. What's going on? Qin Hao was stunned. What did Master just say? The disciples of the Seven Peaks knew everything about the illusory palace in detail. Wasn't this a secret? As the disciple of Palace Lord, he should have the right to know. Why did everyone know about it now? Moreover, what was this mission? At that moment, Qin didn't feel good. The information that he should have known was known by everyone else. But the so-called mission of the Seven Peaks disciples was never mentioned by Eastern Sky. Look at the sad look on Junior Brother's face. Zhang Yu poked Eastern Sky with his arm. He seems to be very unhappy with us, Eastern Sky said. Then when we enter the illusory palace later, we'll let him have his fill. Zhang Yu and Eastern Sky looked at each other, the two revealing a sinister smile. This illusory palace is incomparably dangerous and bloody. In short, it's a living hell. There are all kinds of monsters inside. They kill without batting an eye and eat without putting salt. After entering, in addition to thinking of all ways to survive, you have to strengthen yourself as much as possible. The inner cores of demonic beasts are formed from elixirs and can be eaten. Some of the dangerous places hide powerful cultivation techniques, as well as the divine soldier of the Xiantian Palace. It all depends on your own luck and fortune. The duration is 1 year. After 1 year, the effect of the formation will disappear. During this 1 year, your life and death will be determined by the heavens. Migres's lecture was endless. Before the disciples entered, he had already described the illusory palace as extremely terrifying. An incomparably dark shadow was branded in their hearts. I must come out alive. My parents are still waiting for me to succeed and return to the family. I must not die in the illusory palace. Everyone, the opportunity to prove our 2 years of cultivation has come. Once we enter the illusory palace, we can also learn the high-grade emperor techniques that only direct disciples can come into contact with. For us, this is another great opportunity that will change our lives. Everyone, work hard. Roar. Your life and death will be determined by the heavens. In a training hall, more than 700 Divine Palace disciples were extremely excited by Migres's words. Their blood seemed to be burning, and their bodies were filled with endless power. The illusory palace has Uncle Master Tai Wei's elixirs, Xiantian Palace's weapons, and Daozong Peak's emperor techniques. Why didn't Senior Brother tell me? Qin Hao felt that he had really been deceived. Look, Junior Brother's eyes are full of malice. Changyu became serious. Junior Brother's resentment ran deep. It's just some low-grade elixirs and ordinary emperor techniques. Only the second and third-class disciples of the Divine Palace would regard them as treasures. They are of no use to him. Qin Hao has learned the top emperor techniques of the Divine Palace, personally taught by the Peak Masters. What does he have to resent? Well, he does need to be taught a hard lesson. Why don't I take the first battle? Eastern Sky's purple robe stirred up a surge of fighting spirit. He also wanted to try to suppress his realm and see what it would be like to fight Qin Hao. Eastern Sky, the most talented disciple of the previous batch of Divine Palace disciples. Qin Hao is also the most talented disciple of this batch. When the two most outstanding geniuses collided, just thinking about it made Eastern Sky a little excited. In addition to the buried elixirs, weapons, and emperor techniques, there is also a palace flag in the illusory palace. Whoever can bring the palace flag out can make a wish to us, 7 Peak Masters. No matter what the wish is, as long as it does not violate the Tao of heaven and earth and is within our power, we can satisfy you. Even if you want to be my personal disciple, it is also possible, Tian Quan said. The palace flag has already said it. What about the cheating that we discussed? Where's my advantage? Qin Hao suddenly realized that his master was such a fair and upright person. He was so upright that he deserved a beating. Listening to the howls of the disciples and feeling their violent emotions, Qin Hao thought for the first time that taking the palace flag might get him killed. It's too difficult. I just want to go out of the Divine Palace. Why do you all have to be my enemy? Qin Hao looked up to the sky and sighed. Well, that's all I have to say. It depends on your personal fortune. Next, open the illusory palace array. Yun, Yi. Tian Quan looked at Yun. Yes. Old Taoist Yun, Yi stepped forward, the whisk on his back. His hands quickly formed a seal, and in an instant, the sky darkened. Strands of turbulent, invisible energy enveloped the training hall, enveloping everyone, including Qin Hao. Open. Yun Yi roared and stomped on the ground. A layer of dazzling array light spread out from the soles of his feet and rushed into the sky, covering the entire firmament. Beware of Dilly. Tian Quan roared and pointed to the sky. An incomparably turbulent Emperor Tao light erupted. The power of the extreme Nirvana realm penetrated the void and merged into the array that Yun Yi had opened. The array surged with an extremely terrifying destructive power. At this moment, wisps of Emperor Tao light rose into the sky one after another. Dao Zong slammed his palm down, and tribulation thunder rolled under his palm, turning into a thunder dragon that soared in the sky and entrenched itself in the array. Perfected Lord Tai Wei closed his eyes, and his will condensed into a sky-high medicinal cauldron. The cauldron shone brightly and flew out like a dragon pearl, merging with the thunder dragon and array light. The entire array seemed to have a soul. Zither, zither, zither. The sound of the zither spread. The beautiful Yao Guang deity Lord sat on the ground and released her Guqin spirit. Wisps of Nirvana Guqin spirit broke through the air and merged into the array. The array glowed with a 7-colored luster, as if the sound of the zither was transmitted, filling the world with color. In the next moment, a sturdy figure rose into the sky. Mizar Zhanzun was clad in golden armor, like a god of war descending to the world. He held an 8-foot-long halberd and stabbed out. Endless Nirvana Guqin spirit turned into Emperor Tao light and rushed into the array. A terrifying martial power was born in the array, as if the living beings inside had turned into many living experts. Hammer! Xiantian deity Lord roared, her cold face devoid of any emotion. As soon as she finished speaking, the platinum clear sky hammer spirit appeared in her palm, and the world trembled. She smashed out across the air, and the light that swept out seemed to cut open the firmament and disappeared into the array. In the array, there was a series of intensive hammering sounds. The incomparably turbulent power seemed to smash into the hearts of the disciples, including Qin Hao. None of the 700 people were normal. They all turned pale. Strong, it was too strong. Any one of the peak masters of the 7 peaks had the power to destroy everything, even though the attributes of their powers were different, such as life, death, magic, and sound. The direction of each power was extremely strong. After this hammer strike, the array glowed with an incomparably intense 7-colored light. It was as if the array had been hammered into reality and turned into a real world. Then, this seven-colored array light that blotted out the sky slowly pressed down with a deafening rumble. It was as if another plane had intersected with the divine palace, and the location was coincidentally the Taoist Hall. The 700 disciples in the Taoist Hall were all swallowed up by the array light. The array light shrunk until it turned into a vortex and disappeared. It was as if it had traveled through time and space, taking Qin Hao and the others with it, and completely disappeared. However, Eastern Sky, Chang Yu, Daozong Peak's first disciple, Shenghua, the second disciple, Shi Mu, Zhan Xiong of Mizar Palace, Tian Ke of Xintian Palace, and so on, disappear together with the array light. Children, have fun. Tian Quan, who had almost exhausted all his strength, was barely standing. A gentle breeze blew past, and the body of the master of the divine palace actually swayed a few times in this fragile wind. Not only him, but the other 6 peak masters were also extremely pale. Mizar Zhanzun found it difficult to even stand up. His stalwart figure was bent, and he leaned on the halberd in his hand. He no longer looked like an invincible god of war. Instead, he looked like a hunchbacked old man. Yin Yi and Tai Wei, who were slightly older, were so tired that they were paralyzed on the ground. Master! 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 In an instant, the remaining senior disciples all stepped forward. They knew very well that the peak masters no longer had the slightest bit of strength left. In fact, any third-class disciple who walked out of the field could kill the peak masters of the 7 peaks. Chapter 1456. Qian Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation to lunatics after a series of earth-shattering events, tinnitus, dizziness, weightlessness, and all kinds of side effects of the array. The scene in front of him was a vast world. Cold currents raged, and bone-chilling winds mixed with ice and snow swept past in front of him. Knives cut across his face, and it was particularly painful. Qin Hao endured the nausea brought by the array. He wrapped his arms around himself, and his thin clothes made him shiver several times in a row as he scanned the surrounding environment. It's snowing. Snow fell, and in a moment his ankles were buried. In the distance, countless snowy peaks rose and fell, like a giant ice dragon roaring to the sky. It was a spectacular sight. Qin Hao was in the middle of the snowy mountains. Wind, snow. The intertwined, cold currents were so vivid, as if they were real. Several giant ice bears hid in the mountains, exuding a dangerous aura. A large group of wolves rushed past, stirring up a raging snowstorm. Occasionally, a few wolves would stop and look in the direction of the giant ice bears with bloodthirsty eyes. Sensing that the other party's aura was strong, they reluctantly returned to the group and continued to run. Amazing, Qin Hao praised. It was hard to imagine that this was an illusion formed by the formation of 7 nirvana, heavenly emperors. His 2 senior brothers were right. The creatures of the illusory palace not only had fresh life, but also had independent thoughts and were born with survival instincts. The elements between heaven and earth were pure and abundant, extremely suitable for martial artists to cultivate. If he didn't know in advance that this was a trial site, Qin Hao would have thought that he had returned to the secular world. First, I have to find a way to meet up with Xiao Han and Wuk. Then, I have to find the palace flag. There was no one nearby. When they entered the array, more than 700 disciples of the divine palace were disrupted by the array and scattered everywhere. Now, Qin Hao was alone, and what he was about to face was not only the sneak attack of his former enemies, but also the native creatures here. After all, some of the creatures were strong enough to reach the Emperor realm. Chang Alo, Yu Qianyang, and many disciples of the Xianyuan family would never let go of any opportunity to get rid of Qin Hao. They didn't dare in the divine palace, but this was the illusory palace. No matter how strong Lord Migres was, he couldn't affect the palace. If possible, they may join forces with the native creatures and use of the illusory palaces to kill Qin Hao. This was clear in Qin Hao. Let's find a place first. He took a step forward. In this short period of time, the falling snow had already reached his knees, truly surging violently. What is it? What is the translation? What? Is translation translation? He was now an Emperor realm cultivator. Not to mention not using his vitality to protect his body. Even if he had a body of copper and iron, the weather in the mortal world would not affect him at all. It could be seen that the inside of the illusory palace was indeed different from the outside world. Once a cultivator entered, they might be weakened. Let's get a clear understanding of the situation first. Otherwise, it will be a fatal weakness in the future. Qin Hao's spiritual force spread out like a large net between heaven and earth. He sensed the aura of a living person 100 miles away. Nodding, the spiritual qi around his body surged. He was ready to spread his spiritual wings and go to the place to rest. But at this moment, a ray of light suddenly slashed down from the void. Dazzling golden flames engulfed the wind and snow within a radius of hundreds of meters. It was incomparably turbulent, forming a golden storm that blasted toward Qin Hao. Break! Qin Hao sensed the murderous aura. He raised his hand and grabbed at the void. Endless spiritual qi was absorbed, and he slammed his palm forward. The tyrannical palm force blasted up into the sky and destroyed the golden storm. Meanwhile, a tall figure descended slowly, and he had slanted brows and a cold gaze as he blocked Qin Hao's path. Qin Hao stared at the young man in front of him. This person's face was unfamiliar, but his cultivation was not low. He didn't know if he was a disciple of the Divine Palace or a native of the Illusory Palace. "Who are you? Why do you want to kill me?" Qin Hao asked. Even if he was a native, there should be a reason for him to kill. Kill. Unexpectedly, the young man was incomparably cold. He formed a seal with his hands, and a stream of ice and snow air circled around his body, turning into a roaring ice dragon. The dragons danced wildly, and their sharp dragon claws mercilessly smashed toward him. You started first. Qin Hao was also depressed. He had just arrived, and he ran into a madman who killed everyone in sight without giving a reason. Just as senior brother Eastern Sky said, the Illusory Palace was an unreasonable place, and there was a group of unreasonable people here. The art of endless samsara ran, and the blood-red flames burned on his body. Qin Hao knew that the young man had some skills, so he didn't intend to waste time with him from the beginning. He directly took out the soul fire and burned this madman. The blood-red demon flame entangled and turned into a flaming sword. Many of the swords circled around his body, and with the roar of the ice dragon, Qin Hao pointed his finger, and the flaming sword around his body pierced out one after another. Ice and fire collided, and a fierce impact erupted. Powerful origin energy shook the earth, and several snowy mountains in the distance collapsed, kicking up snow and dust into the air. The flaming demon's swords pierced the ice dragon's body, but the young man was also very strong. The power of ice completely neutralized the red lotus tyrannical fire. The ice dragon dissipated, and the demon's swords were destroyed. 5th level Emperor realm, the same level as me. Not bad. The corner of Qin Hao's eyes twitched. This was the first time he had met someone in the same realm who could neutralize his red lotus tyrannical fire. 10,000 layers of ice kill. The young man bent down and slammed his palm on the ground, shaking up countless piles of snow. The snow shot toward Qin Hao, and a terrifying ice spread from his palm along the ground. It was several meters thick, and it wanted to freeze Qin Hao completely. In this instant, the temperature of the world dropped madly, and it turned into an ice cave. Red Lotus Explosion Blade. Qin Hao put his palms together, and a majestic, demonic flame spewed out from between his palms. The flames burned the sky and evaporated everything around him. A several dozen meter long flame slashed the ground like a sword aura, shattering the spreading ice and creating a smoking black path from the center. Your soul power is not bad. What a pity. The young man sneered and changed the seal between his palms. The ice, spreading from both sides, quickly gathered toward the center and swallowed Qin Hao in an instant. The energy wrapped around Qin Hao like an ice python, layer after layer, and completely froze him into a giant ice cube. This shouldn't be all. Eastern Sky's incarnation of youth said in his heart. He was well aware of his junior apprentice brother's abilities. As expected, the next step was to use the dragon's soul to undergo body metamorphosis. Rumble. With a deafening explosion, the ice shattered, and a colossal creature covered in glittering golden scales soared into the sky. Its crimson dragon eyes looked down at the eastern sky, and a gigantic ball of flame was held in its malevolent dragon claws. The world was filled with the aura of a peerlessly domineering dragon. "You madman, you've provoked me." Flame dragon whirling sky slash. Qin Hao roared and swung his dragon claws down. The giant flame exploded, and a giant dragon wrapped in blood flames flew out. The giant dragon roared and swooped down, landing on Eastern Sky's position. A sea of fire soared into the sky, and its sharp dragon claws wreaked havoc, like countless blades crazily slashing. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Qin Hao turned into a stream of light and flew into the distance, fleeing far away. The Flame Dragon Slash was a powerful attack that combined the power of the dragon and the Red Lotus Fire. It could tear apart enemies of a higher realm, and there had never been an accident. But after hitting the young man, the destructive power did not let out a scream. This situation would never happen in the past. It was enough to prove that the other party had the strength to contend with the Flame Dragon Slash. This opponent was several times more difficult to deal with than Qin Hao had imagined. He had just entered the illusory palace and encountered such a freak. Without knowing the details, Qin Hao had no reason to fight to the death. If that madman was the descendant of some emperor-level creature, the consequences would be more serious. Rumble. The demonic flames collapsed and dissipated. The exhausted giant dragon saw that its prey was intact and disappeared with a sad cry. Then, the figure of a young man appeared on the spot. "Sai, why did he run away?" Eastern Sky looked at Qin Hao in the distance with a dissatisfied face. He glanced at his clothes and saw that some parts of his body were damaged. His palms were bright red, and there was a slight burning sensation. This junior apprentice brother had used both of his souls, and the power was quite good. At the very least, he had injured Dong Tian's hands. But he ran away before my soul came out. It's a bit unkind. Eastern Sky shook his head. He would continue to chase and kill until he was satisfied. Roar! An ear-piercing howl of a wild beast reverberated through the air. East Sky focused his eyes and saw an old man riding a strange snake in the air, cursing as he pointed in a certain direction. This old man's entire body was naked, and even his beard was charred. The smell of the Red Lotus Fire filled the air. It was clear that he had been burned by Qin Hao until his clothes were barely covering his body. "Changyu is not as good as me," Eastern Sky said proudly. His figure flashed, and he joined the old man. Puff! In the Snow Mountain forest, Qin Hao spat a mouthful of blood on the ground. His lips were purple, and the bulging veins on his neck were like black earthworms. While walking, his body twitched uncontrollably. Obviously, he had been poisoned. "I was poisoned by a snake." Qin Hao's breath weakened rapidly. The poison spread in his body and seeped into his organs. The tranquil water washed through his meridians again and again, but it could not purify the poison. "My body is made of 10,000 spirits and is impervious to poison. I can't withstand the snake poison in the illusory palace." His consciousness began to fade. Qin Hao shook his head and tried to stay awake. His luck was too bad. He had just entered the trial ground, and before he could stand firm, he met a lunatic. This lunatic was in the same realm as him and had the ability to resist Qin Hao's dual soul power. What happened next was even worse. He had just escaped from the lunatic when an ugly old man riding a strange snake rushed out of the snow forest. Without saying a word, he also attacked his face. The old man was ferocious, and the snake was strong. He opened the battle strength of 2 palaces and punched the snake's head. The snake was only pushed back and was unharmed. However, Qin Hao was unfortunately infected by the snake's poison. At that time, he realized something was wrong. He began to lose focus and showed signs of fainting. He used all his strength to activate the Flame Slaughter Sky Absolute Formation and escape from the snake old man. Although he did not know how the old man was doing, Qin Hao's condition was not good. The snake's poison had entered his body and destroyed his spirit body. The tranquil water could not expel it. This illusory palace was indeed different from the outside world. It weakened a martial artist's ability in some aspects. I need herbs, 7-star grass, ageless root, 100-year wild ginseng, 6-horned demonic fungus. I need to cure this snake's poison. Qin Hao's expression was uncomfortable. He tore his chest and clothes with his hand, leaving a bloody fingernail mark. He did not know what kind of snake this was. The snake's poison was very strong and spread quickly. If he could not cure it quickly, he would die. Less than 2 hours after entering the illusory palace, he, a direct disciple of the master of the divine palace, was poisoned to death by a snake. There is probably nothing more humiliating than this. However, he really did not have the strength to support it. The poison spread too quickly. Plop. Qin Hao fell to the ground. Immediately, he heard a call. "Father, there's movement." The voice was young and not old, no more than 15 years old. It was full of vigilance. "Don't move. It might be a beast." A magnetic middle-aged voice sounded. "It's not a beast. It's a person. Father, look. It's really a person. We are in the wilderness and snow is everywhere. How can there be a person? Father, save him. This child, let's go." We didn't see anything. The voice gradually faded away. Chapter 1457. Qin Hao didn't know how long he had been in a coma. A warm current flowed into his abdomen, and his cold consciousness gradually regained some consciousness. There was still a swelling pain in his head, paralyzed by the snake venom, and weak all over. Qin Hao felt as if he was lying on a bed, and there were several voices calling anxiously in his ears. "I, Li Wanji, have accomplished nothing. I'm over 50 years old, but I was fortunate enough to be helped by my master and learn the magical power of enchantment. My master died in a strange way, and I haven't avenged her yet. You can't fall yet. Qin Hao, wake up and find out the truth. Hao, take good care of little Han. I'll entrust her to you in the future. Don't bully her." A familiar face flashed in front of him. It was the northern border martial emperor, Xiao Yi. Xiao Yi turned and left. Opposite him was the vast sea of northern Yan army. In the void, several figures of Emperor Yuan were waiting, exuding monstrous platinum flames. Below them, the once prosperous Liaodu was reduced to ruins. "No." Qin Hao suddenly woke up. He sat up straight, and his cheeks were full of cold sweat. Crack! The porcelain bowl fell to the ground and broke into several pieces. A black viscous liquid spilled on the ground, and the liquid exuded a pungent smell of medicine. Frightened, 3 figures, 2 big and 1 small, huddled together in a corner of the room, shivering. They looked at Qin Hao with eyes full of awe and respect. Qin Hao didn't have time to care about other things. After waking up, he immediately ran his Yuan Qi, and a layer of golden flames enveloped his body. With the help of the warm energy that flowed into his body, Qin Hao's paralyzed and stiff body recovered some strength. He quickly cut his left palm, and the red lotus soul fire in his body burned fiercely. His powerful soul power swept away the remaining poison and forced it to his entire left arm step by step. Suddenly, black and smelly pus and blood flowed continuously from the wound until the poison was completely forced out. Huff! Qin Hao breathed a sigh of relief. Water flowed in his palm, healing the wound and expelling the poison in his body. He felt extremely comfortable. At this time, he looked at the 3 people hiding in the corner. A man, a woman, 2 adults, and a child. They held the child tightly in their arms. Judging from their clothes and relationship, they were an ordinary couple. "Sir Cultivator, please forgive us. We didn't mean to offend you. We only brought you back to our humble abode after seeing you poisoned in the snow. We didn't touch anything on your body. Please have mercy, Sir Cultivator. Lord Xiozha, please show mercy." The couple lamented and pulled the child to kneel on the ground. They were so scared that they didn't even dare to raise their heads. The young man they saved was originally half dead, but in a short moment, spiritual energy gathered around him, and he became energetic. Obviously, he was a cultivator with profound skills. The immortal cultivators were so powerful that they could kill bears and tigers with their bare hands. Experts who could use spiritual energy could destroy mountains and fill seas. However, the couple had never heard of someone like Qin Hao who possessed gold's spiritual power, even in the rumors. At this moment, they were scared out of their wits. Cultivator? Qin Hao frowned. It was probably the name that the creatures of the illusory palace called the local cultivators. Glancing at the broken bowl on the ground and smelling the pungent smell of medicine in the air, Qin Hao asked, "You saved me." "Cultivator, we only fed you medicine and didn't do anything else. We didn't even dare to take off your clothes." The middle-aged man trembled with fear and lowered his head to glare at the child. If it wasn't for the stubborn child who couldn't bear to see the young man freeze to death in the snow, they wouldn't have so many troubles. Now, it was easy to invite Buddha, but difficult to send Buddha away. He hoped that this cold young man would remember his kindness and not do anything excessive. Thinking of this, the middle-aged man also secretly hid his wife behind him. "Don't be nervous. I won't hurt you. Bring the bowl over and let me see," Qin Hao said. The strange snake old man's poison was so powerful that even the tranquil water couldn't purify it. Dinah was very curious about what the couple used to detoxify him. In the room, the couple didn't move at all. Their legs were numb from fear. On the other hand, the 10-year-old child carefully knelt forward and reached out to pick up the broken bowl on the ground. "Good, and don't go," the woman said nervously. She stretched out her arm and hurriedly pulled the child back. Then, she looked at Qin Hao with fear and whispered, "I'll get it for you." As she spoke, she rubbed her legs. Alas, Qin Hao sighed. He stretched out his palm and sucked the broken bowl over. He sniffed and said, "Snake blood. No. Snake gallbladder. No. What did you take from the snake?" "Snake skin." The child named Gooden said. "You talk too much." The middle-aged man scolded and hurriedly put on a smile that was uglier than crying. "Cultivator, you were unconscious for a day and a night. The poison you were poisoned with is called 7-step poison. This kind of poisonous snake is very common in our mountains. They have copper skin and iron bones and are not afraid of the cold. They have tenacious vitality and are also very poisonous. If you are accidentally bitten, you will die. Wang Xiaoju's father next door was poisoned to death by a big 7-step poison yesterday. Unfortunately, we discovered it too late and couldn't save him in time. The men in our village slaughtered the snake. Because of the snake's skin, we used it as medicine and mixed it with porridge and rice. That was how you were saved." The man felt very puzzled at this time. It was rumored that cultivators were very powerful. Even if they were poisoned, they should be able to resist the poison of a 7-step poison. After all, this kind of poisonous snake was very low grade. Ordinary adults, as long as they were careful not to be bitten by it, could kill it with a hoe. For people like Qin Hao who had profound spiritual power, even if there were thousands of snakes, they would not be able to get close to him with a casual wave of his hand. How could he be poisoned? But this man did not know that Qin Hao was not a native creature and did not have the ability to resist native poisons. In particular, the 7-step poison that killed Qin Hao was raised to the level of the Snake Emperor by Chang Yu's secret method. It was equivalent to a poisonous monster with hundreds of years of spiritual power. "I see. I have some money here. Help me bring it to Wang Xiaoju and thank him for giving me the snake skin. Also, keep a portion for yourselves and build a better house." Qin Hao moved his mind, and more than 10 pieces of Earth-grade crystal stones flew out of the interspatial ring. Although it was not much, it was a priceless treasure for ordinary people. Even thousands of gold could not buy it. "This." The man looked at the broken stone in Qin Hao's hand. Although it was shining and looked very good, it was still a stone. Even if it was thrown out, it might not be picked up. How could it be worthy of being called money? Although he said so, the middle-aged man could feel Qin Hao's kindness. He secretly thought that this young man was not bad. He was not as cold-blooded and heartless as the rumors said. Master Cultivator asked you to take it. Take it obediently. The woman gave the man a look. Did he want to die by rejecting the cultivator? Thank you for your kindness. The middle-aged man bowed, as if he was on a pilgrimage, and took it with both hands. Well, sorry to disturb you. Thank you for this time. Goodbye. Qin Hao stood up from the bed and sighed. If it were not for this couple, he, a dignified palace master-disciple, might have died. But no one would have thought that when a martial artist from the outside world entered the illusory palace, he could not resist the poison of the native creatures. This was probably called not acclimatizing. Qin Hao felt that he should catch a few of them and study them. If he could not resist the snake poison, Chang Lo, Yu Qinyang, and the people of the Xinyuan family would not be able to resist it. This poison might play a great role in the future. Opening the door with a whoosh, a gust of wind, and snow rolled in and hit him in the face. It was bone-chilling. Qin Hao, who was wrapped in a thin layer of clothing, had just recovered and could not help but shiver fiercely. Big brother for you. A young child's voice sounded. The child picked up a tattered blanket sewn with patches on the bed and handed it to Qin Hao. Thank you, Gooden. Qin Hao did not stand on ceremony and took it and put it on. Although it could not cover his whole body, it was much better. Immediately, his figure disappeared into the wind and snow. However, just as he walked out of the courtyard, the man behind Qin Hao loudly reprimanded him. They were not rich and had very few things to keep out the cold. Qin Hao exchanged a few stones for a blanket, and the couple had to suffer from the cold. Senior brother is right. I can't have too much contact with the creatures of the illusory palace, so as not to be tied down and affect the trial. Qin Hao shook his head and strongly convinced himself that the child and couple behind him were fake. They would not be frozen to death. They were useless puppets like medicinal herbs, temporary props. Stepping out of Gooden's house, Qin Hao walked for a distance and turned back to look. He found that this was a small village in a valley. There was not a single decent courtyard in the village, and every family was very poor. In a place like this, he could not get any useful information, so Qin Hao did not choose to stay. He considered at least finding a town with more people. Of course, it would be best if there was a city. A large city must have the information and resources needed. Moving forward against the wind and snow, Qin Hao did not fly. Instead, he spread his spiritual force and tried to explore the 7-step fall from the snow and take some snake venom to store on his body. However, he did not find the viper's aura, but the ground under his feet shook violently. It seemed that there was a team in the distance rushing to the mountain village, and the number of people was definitely not small. The sound of horse hooves. Qin Hao's red lotus fire pupil flashed and looked up along the mountain path. His sight seemed to burn through the snow and ice. Sure enough, he saw a valiant cavalry galloping towards him at a very fast speed. Rumble. The horses galloped over. Unlike the war horses of the outside world, in order to adapt to the environment, the cavalry's feet were surprisingly flat and large, like the flippers of a large toad, which was very suitable for running in the snow. Soon, the team came to Qin Hao. Whoosh! A tall figure stood in the middle of the road. Although he was wrapped in a shabby stall, he exuded an extremely cold and arrogant aura. Even if he encountered a majestic horse galloping, he did not avoid it at all. This made the leader of the burly man stop his horse. After all, he was also a person who had seen the world. A hothead like Qin Hao, who stood in the middle of the road without a care for his life, was either a fool or a legendary powerful cultivator. May I ask, is this Yihao village? The leader asked. He had a beard, wrapped in thick mink fur, and carried a heavy axe on his back. He was majestic and noble. I don't know, Qin Hao replied coldly. Yihao village? Was this Gooden's village? The name was quite fateful. Sorry to disturb you. The leader of the group seriously glanced at Qin Hao. The young man's face was ice cold, and there was a faint sense of danger. The leader couldn't see any flaws in Qin Hao's expression, and he couldn't see the depth of Qin Hao's strength. He took the initiative to go around Qin Hao, and with a whip, the war horse galloped away. Rumble. The horse team behind all bypassed Qin Hao. It was as if a torrent of water suddenly encountered a stone, forcibly changing its flow path. Murderous aura. Qin Hao turned around and looked at the horse team that was gradually moving away. This group of people were obviously not kind people. When they passed by just now, many of them stared at him with a ferocious expression. If it was not for the leader of the horse who did not say to attack, this group of horse bandits would definitely not have let Qin Hao go so easily, let alone take the initiative to bypass him. But now, they were rushing to the village where Gooden was. The less trouble, the better. Take the snake venom, find a city to check for information, and meet up with Xiao Han's group first. Qin Hao had a trace of struggle, but it was only for a moment. Senior brother said that the creatures in the illusory palace were all illusions, and there was no need to care too much about their lives. In the distance, on a towering snowy peak, two figures stood. One was a young man with sharp eyebrows and cold eyes, and the other was a bald and ugly old man with a walking stick. The two stood on the peak, and the falling snow in the air avoided them. For Sharp Eyes shot into the distance and instantly caught sight of Qin Hao's figure. "You lured the horse bandits?" Eastern Sky said coldly. "I told the leader of the bandits that the villagers hid the earth-grade spirit stone," Chang Yu said with a smile. "You?" Eastern Sky raised his sharp eyebrows in anger. Even the creatures in the illusory palace were still alive when the formation was still in place. "Senior brother, you were too kind back then and almost made a big mistake. The illusory palace is dangerous, and junior brother is alone. It is good to let him experience it in advance. Since you don't want to be the bad guy, then I will be. Guess, will he save Gooden?" Chang Yu said. "He definitely will." Eastern Sky knew Qin Hao's character and did not doubt it. "I have no choice. I can only guess that he won't. Look, he is very happy to catch snakes now." Chang Yu pointed his walking stick at the snow forest. Chapter 1458. The wind and snow drowned the sky and earth. The small village in the mountains seemed to have been abandoned by the gods, unable to receive any pity. The surging horse herd galloped over, causing the thatched huts to collapse one after another. Blades danced in the wind and snow. Screams and blood dyed every corner of the village red. The ferocious men chased after the villagers with their blades raised. The corpses were mercilessly trampled by the horses. Blood splattered on the ground, like blood lotuses blooming in the snow, one after another. The strong men of the village were burning with anger. Their eyes were red as they charged forward without hesitation. However, they were knocked down by the horses one after another. The impact caused their internal organs to rupture, and they were reduced to corpses, gradually covered by snow. Seeing that their resistance was futile, the elderly cried out in pain. The children screamed in horror. However, what they got in return was the excited howls of the horse bandits. "Speak, where did you hide the spirit stones?" A one-eyed horse bandit tore the hair of a young girl with his palm. He waved the butcher's knife at the neck of the young girl's father, his eyes filled with contempt. At this moment, the remaining villagers were all herded together like lowly pigs and sheep. They were surrounded by the horse bandits. "Sir, I don't know what you want. Food, clothes, I'll give them all to you. I beg you, let my daughter go." The old father cried. He did not care about the blade cutting his skin. He stretched out his hands, hoping to protect his daughter in his arms. "Pucci!" The butcher's knife slashed across, and the old man fell to the ground. His eyes looked at the young girl under the horse bandit's palm. The tears in his eyes seemed to be telling his own incompetence. "Father," the young girl struggled. "Be honest. I still have to enjoy you later." The one-eyed horse bandit laughed. His blood-stained palm touched the young girl's face. However, the young girl bit the horse bandit's palm. She looked as if she wanted to swallow his flesh. "Bitch!" The one-eyed horse bandit screamed and pushed the young girl away. He was furious. The butcher's knife slashed again. A flower like life withered. Blood flowed along the ground like a blooming blood lotus. Unappreciative thing. The one-eyed horse bandit spat at the corpse. "Enough, Wu San." The head bandit, who was wearing a noble mink fur and had a beard, said coldly. "Boss, this old thing is the village chief." At this time, two burly men carried an old man with one foot in the grave. One of the old man's legs was lame, and he was dragged on the ground, leaving behind an eye-catching trail of blood. "Hang him up," the head thief said. Immediately, the two burly men grinned and took out a rough hemp rope to tie the old man's wrist. They threw the other end of the rope to the withered old tree at the entrance of the village and pulled it down with all their might. The old man's feet left the ground, and he was suspended in the air. He could not help but let out a miserable scream. "Village chief! Village chief!" Among the villagers, a few injured young men clenched their fists so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. However, they saw the old village chief shake his head at them. "Hand over the spirit stones, and I'll spare this old trash's life," the head thief in a mink coat said. "We don't have the spirit stones that you want." A young man with a severed left arm stood out. His name was Wang Xiaozhu. His father could be considered lucky. He had just been bitten to death by the seven-step snake and did not encounter this disaster. "Call him," the head of the thieves muttered to himself. Immediately, the two burly men prepared to attack the old village chief. "Let me do it." One-eyed Wu San snatched the horsewhip from one of the men's hands and used all of his strength to whip the village chief's body. This whip tore the village chief's clothes apart, revealing a dark green whip mark. Gradually, blood seeped through the whip mark and flowed down. "Village chief!" The villagers cried bitterly. "Haha, this old trash is old. He can't take a few lashes. If you don't hand over the spirit stones, he might die," the head thief in the mink coat said. "But we really don't have the spirit stones you want." Wang Xiaozhu was anxious and angry. He looked like he was going to risk his life. However, his only remaining hand was tightly held by a middle-aged man in the village. Behind a middle-aged man were Gooden and Gooden's mother, who were scared silly. "Zhu Zi, don't be rash," the Gui said, although he was also very angry. Their Yihao village was poor to begin with. How could they have any spirit stones? Everything was happening to them. They had fearfully saved an immortal cultivator, but the moment the immortal cultivator left, horse bandits came. Wait, immortal cultivators. Could spirit stones be one of them? The Gui suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed greatly. At this moment, Gooden's and his mother's souls trembled. The family of three looked at each other in tacit understanding. "Cough, cough. Honorable uncle, this old man has worked hard for his whole life. I've lived long enough. Today, I'll borrow your hand to beat me to death. This is my good fortune. However, your so-called snacks, we really don't have them. Even if you dig 3 feet into the ground, you won't be able to dig them out. I beg you to be merciful and spare the children in the village." The old village chief was in tears. It didn't matter if he died. Poor Gooden and the rest of the younger generation. They were just over 10 years old and were the seedlings of Yihao village. "Beat," the head thief in the mink coat said fiercely. This old man's bones were quite tough. One-eyed Wu Sin licked the blood on the whip. With a swing of his hand, the horse whip swept through the air, making cracking sounds. Another strike landed on the village chief's body, splitting his skin and flesh. "Wait," the Gui shouted, his voice trembling. "Grandpa Ma, if we hand over the spirit stones, will you really let us go?" The Gui didn't know if the stones Xin Hao gave him were the spirit stones mentioned by the horse bandits. After all, he didn't know what they were. However, he could only take a gamble and try everything he could. "I've roamed the Dayo Mountain for dozens of years. My words are like nails. A man of character must be trustworthy." The head thief's tone was unquestionable. "Okay, I'll give it to you." The Gui clenched his teeth. Facing the cold-blooded horse bandits, he had no choice but to summon his courage. "Father." Gooden threw himself onto Gui's leg and cried. He seemed to know that the tragedy in the village was caused by him. "Son, don't cry." The Gui wiped away the tears on Gooden's face. He looked at all the villagers with a guilty gaze before turning around and rushing back to the house. Seeing this, the head thief smiled and waved his hand, indicating for his subordinates not to stop him. Not long after, the Gui returned with a wicker basket. Inside the wicker basket were a few dirty stones. Even though the stones were covered with a lot of pitch-black mud, it still couldn't cover the bright light they emitted. "I'm sorry, everyone," I also don't know what these things are. They were given to me by that great cultivator. I just thought they were good-looking stones and used them to block the pigsty. De Gouet threw the basket on the ground and sighed deeply. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have watched so many people die. Many villagers glared at de Gouet with angry expressions. At this moment, they didn't hate him. De Gouet was an honest person, and they all knew his temper. If they wanted to hate someone, they could only hate that young cultivator. Big brother. Wusen picked up the scattered earth spirit stones and excitedly handed them to the head thief. Yes, these really are high-grade spirit stones. Even I have never seen such abundant spiritual energy. This time we've struck it rich. The head thief held a spirit stone in his hand. His eyes shone with a burning light. The joy on his face was self-evident. Phew! De Gouet let out a sigh of relief. He took a few steps forward and clenched his fists. I'll give it all to you. Release the village chief. Really all of it? The head thief stared threateningly at de Gouet. De Gouet shook. All of it? Ah, good. The head thief waved his hand at Wu San. Pew pew. Wu San went forward and stabbed through de Gouet's chest. The tip of the blade passed through his back. Blood flowed along the blade. You! De Gouet's eyes were wide, his face filled with anger. Hiding spirit stones on my territory, this is unforgivable. I'm already being lenient by not digging up your ancestral graves. You dare to discuss conditions with me? The head thief said coldly. You untrustworthy thing. De Gouet shouted hoarsely. Bam! Wu San kicked him heavily and sent him flying. He pulled out his butcher's knife and laughed as he charged at the other villagers. Leave no one alive. The head thief in mink fur waved his hand. In the blink of an eye, the bandits riding on the tall horses were like whirlwinds as they ran around the villagers crazily. Streaks of sword light slashed down, and heads flew into the sky one after another. Father, looking at the bloodied body falling into the snow, Go Dan's eyes cracked. Run, run quickly. Go Dan's mother pushed him out in a frenzy, using her body to block the weapon of a burly man wielding a knife. But in the next moment, she followed in her husband's footsteps. In a flash, more than 150 people in the village were turned into corpses. Big brother, this is the only one left. Wu San's rough palm pressed on Go Dan's head. His small and weak body was lifted off the ground. The rest of you, search carefully. As for this child, the head thief glanced at de Gouet's corpse and saw the bloody hole in his chest. He sneered. It's quite pitiful to be alone. Let's be merciful and send this child to follow his father. Okay. Wu San raised his butcher's knife and aimed it at Go Dan's head. The blade was more merciless than ice. I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Go Dan kicked his legs and roared with his eyes closed. Pew! The light of the knife slashed down and blood spurted out. The wind and snow grew heavier and heavier, blocking this scene. However, Wu San's heart-wrenching cries rang out. His cries were even more unpleasant than a ghost's. His strong body staggered back, and the arm holding the knife fell neatly to the ground. What's going on? The wind and snow were too heavy. The head thief waved his hand with all his might. When he looked again, a white-haired, lonely figure appeared in front of him. The figure stood upright, wrapped in a tattered blanket, and emitted an extremely strong, murderous aura. Go Dan, who should have been dead, was in the arms of this white-haired figure. Wu San, who attacked, was lying flat on the ground. Not only was his arm broken, but there was also a finger-sized bloody hole between his eyebrows. In an instant, this bizarre scene shocked all the mounted bandits. Sorry, I'm late. Looking at the corpses all over the ground, Qin Hao's gaze fell on de Gouet. His mood was extremely heavy. It's you. The head thief's expression changed. He had seen Qin Hao before. This person gave off a sense of danger. It's all because of you. Because of you, my father, my mother, and the old village chief are all dead. Everyone in the village is dead. Go Dan hammered wildly in Qin Hao's arms. Qin Hao did not avoid it. He said, I can't repay what I owe you in this lifetime. The only way I can repay you is to do my best to satisfy all your demands. Demands? Who do you think you are? I want my parents to come back to life. I want everyone to come back to life. I want all the murderers to pay with their lives. I want them to die a horrible death. Can you do that? Can you do that? Godan roared wildly. I can't save the dead. I can kill the living. Chinhao's gaze fell on the mink fur thief. Between heaven and earth, the falling snow suddenly stopped, as if time had been frozen. Then a blood-red, demonic flame ignited, burning more and more fiercely. The temperature rapidly rose, and in the blink of an eye, the climate was reversed. Gulp! The mink-skinned thief looked at the bloody flames rising from Chinhao's body. It was a color he had never seen before in his life. His eyelids twitched uneasily, and he swallowed with difficulty. He gritted his teeth and said, "Immortal cultivator." Chapter 1459. The scene became a little suffocating. 50 or 60 bandits surrounded Chinhao and Gooden, but no one dared to take half a step forward. Looking at the rising blood flames, the bandits' hearts beat violently, and their horses became restless. If not for the bandit leader, they might have turned around and run. Immortal cultivators used their bodies as furnaces to refine the Xian Qi of heaven and earth. Those who could control spirit power and release were even more unfathomable. Without a doubt, Chinhao was not only a mortal cultivator, but also the latter. He could release spirit power, and his spirit power was of the fire attribute. Brother, I have no intention of becoming enemies with you. Take this child away, and we'll leave the village immediately. We'll mind our own business. How about that? The bandit leader said seriously. Boom! Chinhao waved his hand and released a flame. It was like a fire dragon circling around the field and surrounded the horse gang. It formed a counter-encirclement and turned into a towering wall of fire. This made the horse gang even more nervous. Understood. Everyone has a share. I'll share the snacks with you. The bandit leader frowned. He had no choice but to take out 3 earth crystals and throw them at Chinhao. In the cultivation world, spirit stones were precious, especially the ones in his hand. The bandit leader's heart ached when he gave them to others for no reason. But he couldn't see through Chinhao's cultivation. He never fought a battle he wasn't confident in. He knew the value of survival very well. Only by being alive could one have unlimited possibilities. It was worth it to exchange a few spirit stones for everything. Bang! There was a shattering sound. The moment the spirit stones entered his hand, Chinhao crushed them into powder. In an instant, pure spirit qi returned to the world, exchanging spirit stones for lives. His spatial ring did not contain just a few heaven crystals, as there were even higher-ranked heaven crystals. However, for these spirit stones, he had implicated the innocent lives of an entire village. Not to mention a few heaven crystals. Even if the head of the bandits brought over an entire mountain of heaven crystals, he would still die. You? The bandit leader glared at him with a fierce expression. The white-haired young man had destroyed the spirit stones without mercy. Did he not know the value of spirit stones? Did he think it was too little, or did he want to make both sides suffer? Don't go too far in life. Brother, you've gone too far, the bandit leader said. Too much. Chinhao glanced at the corpses all over the ground and sneered. Yihao village, right? The thief leader was stunned, not understanding what he meant. Do you know who I am? Chinhao stared coldly at the head of the thieves. May I know your name? The head thief said. Chinhao. As soon as Chinhao finished speaking, the soles of his feet suddenly shook the ground. Immediately, flames raged under his feet, shooting out countless red threads of flame. The dense threads swept out like blood-red ropes intersecting with each other. Each of the flying red threads wrapped around the neck of a thief. In an instant, the 50 to 60 horse gang members in the field were collectively hit. They all clutched their necks tightly with both hands, suffocating until their faces turned blood red, as if they were unable to breathe. Blood seeped out from the palms of many people, and they fell from their war horses in a sorry state. Their eyeballs bulged out of their sockets. However, the space was still as silent as before. Only the sound of the flames burning could be heard. No one could let out a scream. Stop, the bandit leader roared. The bandit leader roared. He clenched his fists, and green flames wreaked havoc around his body. His aura became terrifying. He's actually a martial artist. This surprised Qin Hao. He did not know if the bandit leader's green flames were equivalent to the Yuanshi realm in the outside world. However, judging from the strength of his aura, it was probably at the Yuanshi realm. Boss is showing his power. Boss, kill him. A few of the stronger horse gang members, bound by the red lotus fiery threads, yelled at the top of their lungs. They were very unyielding. As a fellow cultivator, I originally did not want to fight with you. However, since you forced my hand, I'll have to fight it out with you. The bandit leader roared angrily. However, he did not listen to his subordinates and directly attacked Qin Hao. He still stood where he was. Fight it out? No, no, no. Qin Hao shook his head. It's a fight to the death. I live, you die. With a clench of his fist, a vast force descended upon the space. Within the wall of fire, the mounted bandits who had fallen off their horses were all suspended in the air under the control of this force. It was as if an invisible hand had grabbed them by their throats and forcibly lifted them up to the height of the old village chief. This time, the horse gang members were in even more pain. The red lotus fiery threads had cut through their throats. The wound was not large, but they could not make a sound. Their blood flowed out bit by bit. Their palms could not stop it. The feeling of suffocation, blood loss, pain, and fear of Qin Hao all mixed together. They could not die on the spot. They could only watch as the god of death drew closer and closer. This feeling was better than stabbing them in the heart. You're too arrogant. Take my roaring tiger palm. The bandit leader was completely forced into a dead end. He raised his palms and gathered strength. Spiritual chi flowed through his meridians. His palms erupted with a dazzling green light. A tiger's roar also came from his body. He struck out. His two palms turned into two tiger heads and bit Qin Hao's body. At this moment, Gooden was so scared that he leaned on Qin Hao's shoulder. He did not dare to look back. To him, the bandit leader's aura was even more ferocious than a tiger. Boom! The palm imprint entered his body and was completely absorbed by Qin Hao. However, his body did not move in the slightest. How is this possible? The bandit leader was shocked. He gave up resisting and took the roaring tiger palm. He was actually unharmed. This cultivation, the horse gang members who were suspended in the air felt even more despair. Their leader was an immortal master. Could this white-haired youth be an immortal master? According to my previous temper, I would not have wasted my breath on you. However, Gooden wants you to die a horrible death. I can only talk nonsense with you. Now, enough of the nonsense. Your performance is over. Qin Hao slowly raised his right hand. A dazzling golden flame descended and enveloped the blood-red, demonic flames. At this moment, he was like a combination of a god and a demon. He looked both strange and extreme. However, Qin Hao's aura was terrifying to the bandit leader who was merely an immortal master. Golden spiritual chi. He's an immortal emperor. The bandit leader's eyes were about to pop out. He clutched his chest as if he was having an asthma attack. He had difficulty breathing and his face was extremely pale. In the next moment, he also ran without hesitation. An immortal emperor. What kind of tyrannical existence was that? Not to mention the great Yao Mountain, there was not even a celestial sage in the entire Dongchu. The Crimson Flame Emperor who ruled the boundless territory, that supreme lord, was only an immortal emperor. This youth was actually on the same level as the Crimson Flame Emperor. If time went back to 2 hours ago, the bandit leader would not dare to come to Yihao village even if he was given 10,000 guts. There was an immortal emperor here. Run. He risked everything to run, risking the backlash of his spiritual energy to run. However, a vast pressure descended between heaven and earth as if an immortal emperor was suppressing him. How could the bandit leader run? A red line of blood curled out. In the next second, the bandit leader was also suspended in the air. Eldest senior brother said that I should not have too much contact with the beings of the illusory palace to avoid being tied down. He was right. However, the beings of the illusory palace have flesh and blood. They are not props nor puppets. they also have feelings. Life should be respected. It has nothing to do with the trial. Qin Hao gently put down Gooden and walked step by step towards the bandit leader. Along the way, he bent down to pick up Wu San's bloody butcher knife. Cultivation of the person, and also cultivation of the heart. Cultivation is not just about strength. Since the illusory palace is a trial ground, it should cultivate the path of human relations, the laws of nature, and the will of heaven. Since I cultivate, I am the heavens. What do you want? What do you want to do to me? Put down the knife. I admit defeat. I'll give you all the spirit stones and the mink coat. The bloody butcher knife was right in front of his eyes. For the first time, the bandit leader felt that he was so close to death. The 7-step fall in this mountain is a very strange thing. I studied it for a full 2 hours and found that they don't like the flesh and blood of their prey. Instead, they like the bone marrow of their prey. Therefore, their poison has a fatal destructive power to the bone marrow. The cunning thing is that these snakes are very timid. Although their bodies are hard and their poison is very strong, they are quite afraid of death. Especially when they find the smell of blood of their own kind nearby, they will run away. Therefore, their poison is ineffective against their own kind. The antidote is their snake skin. Qin had done many experiments on other animals in the snow. Dinda was intoxicated by the Tao of pill refinement, so he was delayed for some time. Therefore, he was a moment late, and innocent villagers lost their lives. Why are you talking to me about the 7-step fall? What do you want to do? The bandit leader's eyes were filled with panic and fear. A dignified, immortal emperor expert could kill him easily. However, Qin Hao seemed to be chatting with him and slowly explained the knowledge of poisonous snakes to him. Dong! The back of a knife smashed into the bandit leader's leg bone. Amidst the flames, the bandit leader's hoarse howl could be heard. Dong! Another sound. The bandit leader's 2 calves were smashed through from the knees. His bones were shattered, revealing a ghastly white hole. Blood flowed out like a fountain. The 7-step fall sensitivity is rather poor. The village is a bit far from the snow forest. It's a bit difficult for them to find prey. At this time, we need to use yuan qi to create some breeze to diffuse the smell of blood into the mountain. However, due to the climate, the wind and snow will weaken and erode the smell of blood. Therefore, we need to create a ventilation enchantment to control the wind and snow and facilitate the smooth flow of fresh blood. Qin Hao's words made the bandit leader feel as if he had fallen into hell. He flicked his finger and a ray of golden light shot out. The ray of light disappeared from the village into the snow forest in the blink of an eye. This speed was frightening. Then, the ray of light expanded and turned into a 3-meter-wide golden passage that connected to the distance. When the wind and snow met the golden passage, they were all blocked by yuan qi. Whoosh! Qin Hao blew a breath of air along the bandit leader's broken leg. A burning pain, as if his skin was being peeled off, made the bandit leader howl in an ear-piercing voice that was worse than death. Madman, you're a complete madman. A dignified celestial emperor who could rule over a world could easily kill a mere immortal master like him with one palm. Why did he have to torture him like this? The smell of blood poured into the snow forest. Not long after, a rustling sound came from the other end of the golden passage. Moreover, it was getting more and more frequent. In the end, the sound of friction was so dense that it made one's hair stand on end. At this moment, even Gooden was so scared that his face was drained of blood. His whole body was trembling. He wanted these bandits to die a horrible death. However, he never thought that Qin Hao would attract thousands of 7-step fall to gnaw on their flesh. Moreover, according to Qin Hao's words, the snake's favorite was animal bone marrow. The scene later could be imagined. The bandits would definitely be pierced to death by thousands of snakes. Was it cruel? Perhaps. However, looking at the corpses of the villagers all over the ground and the bloody hole into Gui's chest, Gooden suddenly released the stuffiness in his heart. His whole body was incomparably smooth. Chapter 1460. The 100 Countries Alliance was part of the Red Flame Imperial Realm. It was located in a remote area and lacked resources. There were very few celestial sages in the entire Hundred Lands. Even the country lords were only at the celestial master level. Dongchu, where Mount Dayo was located, was one of the Hundred Lands. 10 days later, Qin Hao and Gooden arrived at the capital of Dongchu. The village had been destroyed, and Gooden was the only child left in the village. Although it was inconvenient to take care of a child, especially during the illusory palace trial, Qin Hao might encounter danger at any time. Leaving Gooden alone in Mount Dayo would be too cruel. Even the most basic survival would be a problem. Although it was inconvenient, Qin Hao decided to protect him for the rest of his life. Although Gooden only had 1 year in his life, the bustling capital was filled with tall buildings. People came and went on the wide streets. Within the luxurious palaces were wealthy nobles dressed in brocade robes. Whether it was the small stalls or the high-end restaurants, there was an appetizing aroma. As soon as he entered the city, Gooden was stunned by the magnificent scene in front of him. It's so beautiful. Dongchu is even more prosperous than Dad and Mom said. I never thought that I would be able to visit the capital one day. Gooden said with infatuation. His pure eyes stared at a pastry stall by the roadside, and he couldn't help but drool. Boss, give me 10 servings of osmanthus cake. Qin Hao stopped at the stall with Gooden in his arms and said to a middle-aged man, 10 servings. The middle-aged stall owner glanced at Qin Hao's shabby clothes. He wasn't even as well-dressed as a pastry seller. He was clearly a beggar. Is there a problem? Qin Hao asked. Fine. I just opened the stall. Bad luck. The middle-aged stall owner reluctantly cut off a small bite and threw it to Qin Hao. He meant to tell him to scram and not interfere with his business. Qin Hao didn't take it and let the pastry fall to the ground. A light appeared in his palm, and he threw a bag of silver to the stall owner. 10 servings. The stall owner was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly opened his money pouch. The moment he saw what was inside, he smiled even more brilliantly than a chrysanthemum. He nodded and said, Sir, please wait for a moment. It will be ready soon. As he spoke, the stall owner chopped up 10 pastries. His technique was exquisite, and his efficiency was extremely fast. The knife flashed, and the 10 pastries were cut into the same size. Without weighing them, he quickly wrapped them up and handed them to Qin Hao politely. Qin Hao rolled up his sleeves and put away 9 portions. The last portion fell into Gooden's hands, and he turned and left. Sir, you've given too much money. The stall owner shouted behind him. There's no need to look for it. Qin Hao disappeared into the crowd without looking back. That scared me to death. It's actually a great cultivator, and he even has a spatial artifact with him. This person's status is definitely not low. The stall owner patted his chest, feeling a lingering fear. In the future, when doing business, it was better not to judge others by their standards. You're really rich. Gooden held the osmanthus cake and ate it all over his face. He had never seen someone as generous as Qin Hao. The amount of silver he gave the stall owner just now was not a small amount. Even if the entire village's 5 years of harvest were added together, it would probably not be enough. Qin Hao smiled. Just tell me what you want to eat. Don't hesitate. Why don't we go buy some clothes that suit our taste? Gooden looked back and forth at the children on the street. He looked at what others were wearing and then looked at himself. His eyes were filled with envy. Qin Hao had long noticed this scene. Clothes that suit our taste. Gooden was a little embarrassed. No, there's no need. Mother said before that it's fine as long as we wear warm clothes. After saying that, he shrank his little hands that were red from the cold into his sleeves. Seeing this, Qin Hao secretly circulated his yuan qi and guided a trace of warm energy into Gooden's body. Then, he walked toward a high-end clothing store not far away. Get out of the way. All of you get out of the way. You stop right there. And you stop right there, too. A commotion came from a front. Countless people ran away in a panic. Qin Hao saw that a group of well-equipped soldiers from the capital city had surrounded a few people who were dressed like cultivators. He did not know what they were asking, but in the end, a general who looked like a commander waved his hand and let the cultivators leave. What happened? Qin Hao frowned slightly. He felt that this group of soldiers from the capital city was very serious. However, it had nothing to do with him. He strode forward again. At this moment, the general, who looked like a commander, seemed to have sensed an extraordinary aura among the commoners. Instantly, his sharp gaze was like a sharp sword as it locked onto Qin Hao's body. In a deep voice, he said, "You stop." Qin Hao was about to step into the clothing store when he heard the warning. He could not help but stop and turn around to look at the general. "What's the matter?" "Surround them." The general waved his hand. With a whoosh, nearly 100 soldiers rushed forward and surrounded Qin Hao and Gooden. Gooden had never seen such a scene before. He was so frightened that he hugged Qin Hao's neck tightly. His heart was thumping violently. He was born in a poor village deep in the mountains. He had dreamed of entering the capital city many times. However, he did not expect to be surrounded by the king's elite soldiers on his first visit. These heavily armored soldiers were much stronger than the horse bandits who had massacred the villagers. They could not be compared at all. "Don't be afraid." Qin Hao patted Gooden's back. He looked at the general indifferently and said, "I have a bad temper. If you can't give me an explanation, the consequences may be very serious." "Oh." The general was also surprised. He was so angry that he laughed. "You're threatening me first." "Ha ha." The soldiers burst into laughter. This was the capital city, right under the king's feet. It was the first time they had seen a beggar challenge the general. Of course, the soldiers here would not really treat Qin Hao as an ordinary beggar. This was because he had spirit chi waves. "Ha! Cultivators all have a temper. It's understandable. Don't be nervous. I will ask you a few questions. You can leave after you answer them." The general smiled. "Speak." Qin Hao said. "Where are you from? Which sector are you from? Why are you in the capital city?" The general said calmly. The questions were simple, but Qin Hao was stumped. Asking about his background? He was from Western Liang. But was there a Western Liang here? Where did he learn from? Qin Hao had joined many sects. Fengli Temple in the state of Jiang, Qian University in Luoshui. He was currently taught by the Migres Hall of the Antarctic Divine Palace. His master was the most powerful person in the divine region, a celestial lord. But it was useless to say these things. "Cultivator, answer my question." The general's face suddenly became extremely serious as he shouted. "It has nothing to do with you." Qin Hao did not want to be entangled. He turned around and stepped into the clothing store. "Capture him," the general ordered. Immediately, a few soldiers stepped forward and took out ropes to wrap around Qin Hao's head. "Big brother, be careful," Gooden reminded him. Boom! A powerful aura burst out, and the soldiers who had stepped forward were all sent flying and fell heavily to the ground. Qin Hao turned around and looked coldly at the general. "Don't make me remind you again. My temper is not very good. Resist? You're courting death." The general roared as he grabbed at the air with his right hand. A blue flame aura shot out. Puny Yuan Zone. Qin Hao was too lazy to attack. Instead, he released a vast amount of Yuan Qi from his body, forming a torrential tornado. The huge tornado raged, and the attack of the Yuan Zone realm general seemed insignificant. It was torn to pieces by the tornado. Then, a shockwave that was mixed with a dragon's roar spread out. The hundreds of soldiers present, including many civilians on the street, were instantly sent flying. The general also felt as if he had been struck by lightning. He spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying into a tavern opposite. So powerful. The soldiers who had fallen to the ground were extremely shocked this time. Qin Hao had only released his spiritual energy and had sent them crashing to the ground. Even an immortal zone realm general could not withstand it. How powerful was he? Buzz, buzz, buzz. When the tornado raged, many important figures in the city felt Qin Hao's presence. Many figures streaked across the sky and landed on the scene one after another. "What's going on?" A general in golden armor, whose aura was stronger than the general's, asked. There were 4 other experts like him present. "General, this person's cultivation is very strong. It is very likely that he is the person that Divine Master is looking for." The general who had fallen into the tavern crawled out and clutched his chest. His armor was shattered and hung on his body carelessly. "Give up resisting, and you will have a chance to live." The general in golden armor looked at Qin Hao. The four people around him took a step forward in unison. Blue yuan qi surged around them. Each of them was stronger than the general who had attacked just now. 5 rank 9 yuan zone realm experts. Do you really think that I am easy to bully? Qin Hao could not help but laugh. The temperature of the street rose faintly. The air was filled with the smell of burning flames. These generals of Dongchu naturally did not know how unfathomable Qin Hao's abilities were. However, Good knew very well what Qin Hao was going to do next. When he recalled the scene of him slaughtering the mounted bandits, Godan still had a slight shadow in his heart. At that time, Qin Hao had utilized a flame technique to trap all the mounted bandits, and then he found a myriad of venomous snakes to gnaw on them. He swallowed their flesh, sucked their marrow, and gnawed them to death. In the end, all the horse bandits were reduced to skeletons riddled with holes. Qin Hao had used a secret technique in advance to preserve the villagers' corpses. After a collective burial, he had come to Dongchu's capital. Was he going to start a massacre in the capital again? Gooden did not know how high Qin Hao's cultivation was, but he knew how ruthless his methods were. Judging from how easily he had defeated the general of the capital city, he was afraid that no one present was a match for Qin Hao. Big brother, let them go. Gooden shuddered when he thought of the scene of demonic flames burning the sky. Don't disturb my mood, Qin Hao warned. He was not a murderer, but it did not mean that he did not have a temper. You know who you're talking to. Bang! An invisible stellar energy shot out and struck the golden-armored general. He was sent flying like a human cannonball, and before he could even finish his sentence, he disappeared from the sight of the crowd. Who else? Qin Hao said. Gulp. The other four swallowed hard and looked like they were struggling. Although the Divine Master had ordered them to investigate the cultivators who entered the capital, the white-haired young man was obviously very powerful. They were not a match for him. Only the Nation Lord could suppress him. Clap, clap, clap. Speaking of the Nation Lord had arrived. A round of applause was heard, and a stout fatty wearing a majestic dragon robe descended from the sky. He slowly landed in front of Qin Hao. A quasi-immortal saint expert is rare in the 100 Lands. I smell the scent of my own kind from you. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. All the generals, soldiers, and civilians present knelt down. The fat man in front of them was the current king of Dongchu, a quasi-deity saint. His strength was enough to enter the top 10 emperors of the 100 Lands. It was because of the existence of the Nation Lord that Dongchu could stand tall in the 100 Lands. In the eyes of the civilians, he was a true god. Bang! The sound of heads hitting the ground. Bang! Another attack. Bang! The third attack. Then, the generals and civilians present had their worldview turned upside down. The Nation Lord that they relied on, a godlike existence in their hearts, was in front of the white-haired cultivator. They kowtowed until their heads were bleeding. It was a horrible sight, and they could not stop. At this moment, the white-haired cultivator's body emitted a sacred golden light. Although he was wearing shabby clothes, it made him look like an immortal emperor. I said that I have a bad temper, and you have tried to challenge my bottom line again and again. I'm really angry. Qin Hao slowly raised his hand. It would have been better if the fat man did not come. When he came, Gooden was so scared that he trembled all over. Qin Hao had sworn that he would not let Gooden feel any fear, and this fat man scared Gooden. The moment he raised his hand, heaven and earth seemed to be suppressed by the will of the great Tao. Even though the monarch of Dongchu gave up his dignity and kowtowed, crying and snot, it did not weaken the pressure at all. On the contrary, it became stronger and stronger. The shadow of death loomed over his head. The fat man was really about to collapse. He saw the golden spiritual energy. Qin Hao was an immortal emperor on the same level as the Flame Emperor who ruled the Red Flame border. He had offended such a powerful existence. Lord Divine Master, please save me. Unable to be forgiven, the fat man could only use all his strength to howl hoarsely at the sky. At this moment, a beam of azure water appeared in the sky. Along with it, a handsome young man stepped down. He was also surging with a powerful golden radiance. Chapter 1461. Above the void, the blue light of water pressed down. It was vast and boundless, like a vast ocean spreading. Amidst the faintly discernible waves, an arrogant figure wrapped in golden radiance slowly descended. A powerful might suddenly press down from the young man, covering the entire sky above the capital of Dongshu. The temperature below rose, and the smell of burning flames filled the air. Above the void, the raging waves were rolling. Heaven and earth formed in extreme opposition. Divine Master above. The Emperor of Dongshu breathed a sigh of relief, patted his chest, and stood up. He pointed at Qin Hao and scolded, "How dare you?" Seeing the Divine Master here, quickly kneel down and kowtow to admit your guilt. Gooden was even more nervous, and his body trembled. Even though he was not a cultivator, he could feel that the person who descended from the sky was qualified to compete with Qin Hao. "I kneel." The corners of Qin Hao's mouth curled up. He didn't need to look up to recognize who was suppressing the aura. In his impression, there was only one other person who had such pure water power, except for Fairy Qianning of the Shuiyao Holy Empire. "You are indeed a compatriot of the Divine Palace. Who is here?" A playful voice sounded, with an innate sense of nobility. "Why don't you come down and see?" Qin Hao responded indifferently. Thump! In the water of the void, Yi Shuihan's heart skipped a beat. This voice was whoosh. He hurriedly dispersed his primordial qi and descended. When he saw who it was, he was stunned. "We've only been apart for dozens of days. Why don't you recognize me?" Qin Hao said, "Boss, why are you here?" Yi Shuihan was extremely surprised. Thump! The Emperor of Dongshu's heart went numb, and his fat face twisted. "Boss!" This celestial emperor dressed like a beggar was actually the boss of the Divine Master. "It's over." The Emperor of Dongshu's eyes rolled back, and he fainted. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" All the generals and people were shocked. "Useless thing." Yi Shuihan glanced at the Emperor of Dongshu, then put on a smile and looked at Qin Hao. He took a few steps forward and said, "Let's go. This is not the place to talk. Let's go to the palace." Qin Hao nodded and smiled. In an instant, two powerful auras rose into the air and landed in the imperial palace of the Eastern Shu nation. At this moment, the Eastern Shu emperor opened his eyes. "Your Majesty, are you all right?" A general said with concern. "If you're in the way, why don't you hurry back to the palace and apologize to Lord Priest?" As he spoke, the fat man waved his hand and dragged two of his subordinates back to the palace. Next, if the Divine Master were to punish them, at least they would be buried with them. At least they wouldn't be lonely. Who is that person? I don't know. His Majesty is so scared that even the God-tier masters are respectful to him. The commoners were discussing and guessing Qin Hao's identity. In a majestic and magnificent palace. How did the son of the Luo Shui Emperor, the future heir of the empire, become a god-tier master of a small country after entering the illusory palace? Qin Hao put Gooden on the dragon throne and sat on it, almost scaring Gooden out of his wits. "Boss, don't make fun of me. I just happened to bump into you." Yi Shuihan laughed awkwardly and said to the trembling Gooden, "Little friend, don't be afraid. I'm a good person." Then, Yi Shuihan leaned close to Qin Hao's ear with a smirk. "Boss, you're amazing. You've been here for 10 days, and you even have child. How efficient." "Nonsense." Qin Hao rolled his eyes at him. "I accidentally committed a crime and implicated the entire village. Gooden is the only one who survived. But you can't keep him by your side. If you bump into him, don't change the topic. You're a god-tier master, and you even catch cultivators." Qin Hao said seriously, "Didn't I do this to find you guys?" Yi Shuihan said dejectedly. He sat beside Qin Hao and told him everything that happened in the illusory palace. After entering the formation, he felt the world spinning. He had just regained some consciousness when he fell into the divine temple of Dongshu. At that time, the fat emperor was busy offering sacrifices. Yi Shuihan fell from the sky, smashed through the divine temple, and rode on the head of the god statue. That pig-headed emperor wanted to kill me as a sacrifice to the god. However, Several of his Yuan sect's generals died in succession. Only then did he realize my ability. He thought of me as a god-tier master and enshrined me in the palace. I also urgently needed to understand the situation, so I didn't reject him. Yi Shuhen's preaching could be considered a win-win situation. Dongchu had an immortal emperor overseeing it. This emperor's ambition was rapidly expanding, and he was busy annexing the surrounding countries. Yi Shuihan asked him to search for unknown cultivators in order to find the whereabouts of the people of the Divine Palace. It would be best if he met someone he knew. However, if he met Changhe Lo and the people of the Xinyuan family, he would directly kill them. You're bold enough to swagger around like this. Aren't you afraid of exposing your identity and inviting Changhe Lo and Yu Qinyang to join forces? Qin Hao scolded. Yi Shuihan's talent and strength were above average in the 7 peaks of the Divine Palace. Second-class disciples were naturally no match for him. If he met a first-class disciple, he could still fight them. However, that was in a one-on-one situation. If he met 2 first-class disciples, he would definitely lose. After all, Yi Shuihan's level was indeed not high enough compared to the top geniuses like Ning, Tianxing, Qingji Han, and Shouwuk. Even if Qin Hao were to fight against Ning, Tianxing, and Qingji Han, his chances of winning were very small. I'm not a fool. Since you dare to openly search people, you must have a trump card in your hand. Little Nine, the boss is here. Why don't you come out? Yi Shuihan muttered to the air in the hall. Swoosh! In an instant, a wisp of black gas emerged from nowhere. Like a ghost, it bypassed several dragon pillars in the hall and hovered in front of Qin Hao. Ghost! Gooden was so scared that he suddenly trembled and threw the bag in his hand to the ground. Sorry. Little Nine dispersed the black gas and appeared in his original form. He sat on the other side of Qin Hao with a smile and patted Gooden's head. Godan's eyes rolled back, and he fainted on the dragon throne. Be careful. The corner of Qin Hao's mouth twitched. It turns out that the 2 of you are together. In this case, if you encounter 3 first-class disciples, you have the power to fight. Even if Yi Shuihan and Little Nine were no match for them, if they wanted to escape, there were not many people who could stop them. Now that the boss is here, catching 10 of them is no problem. Yi Shuihan was extremely confident in Qin Hao. Unfortunately, after 6 days of searching, only Qin Hao, a disciple of the Divine Palace, came. In this Eastern Shu, there was probably no one else. Boss, what do we do next? Little Nine asked. During the 1-year trial period, the Peak Masters used formations to create illusory palaces. It was to hone the disciples' temperament and let them compete with each other, turning pressure into motivation and constantly improving their cultivation. In the illusory palaces, there were high-grade pills of the Divine Palace, as well as Xiantian Peak divine soldier weapons, which were all tools for the disciples to improve their cultivation. But to find it was not easy, especially to get the palace flag that could make a wish to the 7 Peak Masters. Where the flag was and how to find it, no one had a clue. Let nature take its course. Qin Hao said, cultivation was a process, and some things could be done deliberately, but they could not achieve the desired results. Where's the flag? Yi Shuihan asked. The flag was very important. This trip into the illusory palace, Qin Hao and the others were all for the flag. This was their primary goal. Only by getting the flag could they leave the Divine Palace and deal with the war in the northern borderline. The flag must be found. We have to leave Eastern Shu and go to the main city of this domain. Qin Hao had a plan in mind. Eastern Shu was small, and the possibility of the flag being there was very small. Only by reaching the core of the domain could they obtain important information. That is to go to the lair of the Red Flame Emperor. Yi Shuihan and Little Nine nodded in agreement. The core area must be where the top masters of a domain gathered. What happened in the Red Flame realm could not escape the eyes and ears of the Red Flame city. It was the same as the outside world of the Divine Wilderness. Yes, let's go to the Red Flame Emperor's realm. Qin Hao patted Yi Shuihan and Little Nine on the shoulders. We leave in 3 days. Call that fatty over. He's been hiding outside the palace for a long time. Get in here. Yi Shuihan got up and said in a low voice. Please forgive me, Divine Master. The king of Eastern Shu dragged his 2 generals and scrambled to the bottom of the dragon platform. No one will punish you. Tell someone to prepare the most sumptuous dinner. We will stay in the imperial city for 3 days and leave after that. As a reward, I will help you enter the celestial saint realm. Qin Hao said. As he walked, he took out 2 earth crystals. In an instant, the primordial qi in his palm raged. He extracted the spirit qi from the spirit stones and pressed his palm on the Emperor of Eastern Shu's head. At this moment, the fatty's body trembled violently. He felt an incomparably powerful spirit qi descend and enter through his head, flowing through his meridians. An irresistible force filled his body and forced the Emperor of Eastern Shu's spirit qi to circulate. The incomparably sturdy barrier couldn't withstand a single blow from Qin Hao's celestial emperor power. With a loud bang, the barrier shattered. In the palace, an orange light flickered on the surface of the Emperor of Eastern Shu's body. At this moment, he felt as if a primordial beast had been born in his body. His power surged like never before. Celestial Saint Realm. The 2 generals of Eastern Shu were stunned. This white-haired youth had forcefully raised the Emperor's cultivation. Thank you for your grace, Celestial Emperor. The Emperor of Eastern Shu knelt down in gratitude. In the entire 100 lands, there were only 3 celestial saints. The countries that the 3 celestial saints came for were the top 3 in the 100 lands. Now, his Eastern Shu also had celestial saints. It was only a matter of time before they became the 4th strongest country. Get out of here. Hurry up and find someone to cook. Yi Shuihan waved his hand impatiently. He couldn't figure out why his boss insisted on staying for 3 days. Could it be because of Gooden? Looking at the poor child who had fallen asleep on the dragon throne, Yi Shuihan smiled. The spirit of the Western Liang land and the personal disciple of the current master of the Divine Palace, who had once killed countless geniuses with Qin Hao and was expected to become the number 1 person in the Divine Wilderness continent in the future, was actually so protective of a creature from the illusory palace in the trial grounds. Yi Shuihan didn't know what to say. Could it be that his boss didn't know that Gooden only had 1 year to live? When the power of the array dissipated, the child would no longer exist. Why bother? Chapter 1462. Eastern Shu's capital. Enjoying hundreds of delicacies, sleeping on a dragon bed, and leading Gooden around the capital. 3 days later, Qin Hao and the others went to the center of the Crimson Flame world. Because Gooden couldn't withstand the pressure of space shattering, they didn't tear through space and flew normally. The journey was quite peaceful, and they didn't encounter any accidents. 2 months later, they arrived at the center of the Crimson Flame world, Yiyang City, Yinzhou. Yinzhou was vast and endless, and it was the foundation of the Crimson Flame Emperor. It was heavily guarded and had countless experts. Yuyang City wasn't the main city of Yinzhou, but it had a long history and was glorious. It was highly valued by the Crimson Flame Emperor and was even guarded by an immortal emperor. The most famous place to stay in the city is the Blue Sun Tower. Yi Shuihan pointed to a magnificent pavilion not far away. Before arriving at Yiyang City, they restrained their auras and hid their cultivation as they walked into the city. Then, Yi Shuihan bought a map. The map marks some special buildings in Yiyang City. It's all the fault of the fat monarch of Eastern Shu. He doesn't even know the location of the Crimson Flame world, causing us to take a detour. Little 9 cursed. The Crimson Flame world was vast and not inferior to the southern region of the Divine Wilderness continent. If it wasn't for Qin Hao's strong perception, it would have taken him some time to find this place. Eastern Shu is far away at the border. Saint-level cultivation is the limit. How much do you expect him to know? Qin Hao said as he scanned the city. The ruler of the Crimson Flame world was indeed extraordinary. In Yuyang City alone, there was an emperor-level expert guarding it. And in Yinzhou's main city, Yinzhou's Yinzhou City, there were 3 Emperor Qi. One of the Emperor Qi was very strong. In order to avoid exposing his cultivation, Qin Hao couldn't deliberately check it. He roughly felt that it was close to the 8th level of the Emperor realm. This person was probably the Crimson Flame Emperor himself. As the ruler of a world, the Crimson Flame Emperor naturally couldn't be compared to ordinary Emperor Realm experts. An 8th-level Origin Emperor with an Origin soul. This strength was enough to attract Qin Hao's attention. Moreover, the Crimson Flame Emperor had 3 Emperor-level generals. Big brother, how do you want to get close to the Crimson Flame Emperor? Yi Shuihan asked. If he wanted to know about the Crimson Flame world as soon as possible, the closer he was to a ruler, the easier it would be for him to act. According to Yi Shuihan's style, he could have just paid them a visit. The 3 rulers were not afraid of him at all. With Qin Hao around, it would not be difficult to replace the Crimson Flame Emperor. However, Qin Hao did not allow it. I'll act according to the circumstances. First, I'll settle down in the Azure Sun Tower. Then, I'll secretly investigate the situation in Crimson Flame City and figure out the temper of the Crimson Flame Emperor. Qin Hao carried Gooden into the most luxurious building in Yuyang City, the Azure Sun Tower. Crimson Flame Emperor? Of course, he wasn't afraid. However, for the other party to be able to stand here, could it be that he didn't have a backer? There must be an immortal emperor behind this. Qin Hao never liked to act ostentatiously. Although the illusory palace trials seemed peaceful, it was actually filled with danger. If he knew how to conceal himself, it would be easier for him to seize the initiative. After entering the Azure Sun Tower, they found a seat and sat down. Qin Hao asked Yi Shuihan and Little Jiu to book a room at the counter. Gooden hugged the small package in his arms. His cute eyes curiously sized up the lobby of the Azure Sun Tower. Although this was a restaurant, its decorations were not inferior to the Eastern Chu Emperor's palace. Sitting in the lobby, he looked up. The Azure Sun Tower went up layer by layer, like a huge palace flickering with a halo. With every floor, the halo became stronger. There's an array formation in the building. It's beneficial for cultivators to stay here. Qin Hao smiled and rubbed Gooden's head. Array formation. Gooden seemed to understand. During the days he spent with Qin Hao, he learned a lot about cultivation. However, this was the first time he heard of an array formation. Big brother, why don't you teach me how to cultivate? I want to be as strong as you. I want to kill all the bad guys and not let them harm others. Gooden hugged the package tightly. Gooden had never asked about Qin Hao's background. He only knew that the white-haired cultivator who accompanied him was extremely strong. He was even stronger than the cultivator his parents described when they first met. Gooden really wanted to learn immortal techniques from Qin Hao. However, Qin Hao, who had never rejected him, refused to teach him cultivation. This made Gooden very angry and puzzled. With our boss around, you don't have to cultivate. Yi Shuihan and Little Jiu booked a room and walked over to sit down. Cultivate? Gooden's life had long been arranged. What could he cultivate in a year? The world of cultivators is too cruel. Cultivation is too bitter. Qin Hao pinched Gooden's face. Susu's face appeared in his mind. Like Gooden, it was Susu who saved him back then. However, the difference was that Susu was a living person. As for Gooden, he was just a living being that relied on arrays to survive. But, no buts. Don't you like to eat good food the most? Your Uncle Jiu and I order a lot. It will be here soon. Put down the package and don't hug it so tightly. No one dares to steal in front of the 3 of us. Yi Shuihan said. His gaze landed on the package in Gooden's arms. This package seemed to be extremely important to Gooden. When they came to Yuyang City from Dongshu, Gooden's package never left his hands. He even hugged it tightly when he slept. Who knew what treasures were hidden inside? Qin Hao also felt that it was very strange. When he killed the mounted bandits and buried the villagers, he wanted to leave with Gooden. However, Gooden ran back home and took out a box from under the bed. He wrapped it in layers of cloth. Qin Hao didn't know what was in the box and didn't ask. No, Father said that we can give up everything except for this. This is a treasure passed down from our ancestors. Gooden hugged the package tightly and said. At this moment, the waiter came over with a plate of delicious dishes. The aroma of the dishes aroused Gooden's strong appetite. He licked his tongue a few times and reached out to grab a chicken leg dripping with oil. Even so, his other hand still held the package tightly and did not let go. This child, Yi Shuihan, had never seen a child with such a stubborn temper. Eat slowly. Qin Hao smiled and pulled the plate full of chicken legs closer to Gooden. Boss, where do you think the palace flag is? Little Nine did not have the slightest bit of interest in food. All of his thoughts were on that mysterious palace flag. Back then, Gong Zun had said that during the trial, the illusory palace had pills and divine soldier take. The inner cores of demonic beasts were pills. The warriors of the illusory palace hid the sharp blades of the divine soldier. These things were indeed precious, but their origins could be found. The only clue was the palace flag. There was no hint at all. Eastern Sky's senior brother told me that in order to get the palace flag, in addition to one's own strength, luck accounts for 70%. It depends on opportunity. Although senior brother said it very generally, at least I can analyze that the appearance of the palace flag requires a certain opportunity. It must be born on some special occasion or in some special event. At that time, it will depend on who is faster. Qin Hao recalled Eastern Sky's words. The palace flag was very mysterious. It could be hidden in any place in the illusory palace, volcanoes, deep sea, under glaciers, or in the treasure house of powerful creatures. The chances of deliberately searching for it were very slim. The Crimson Flame world alone was as vast as the entire southern region. How could one find it? However, since it existed and was identified by the 7 Peak Masters as the most precious token of this trial, it would certainly appear when it should. At that time, more than 700 disciples in the illusory palace would more or less receive a signal. Let nature take its course. Yi Shuihan imitated Qin Hao's tone. Suddenly, little Jiu rolled her eyes. Sorry to disturb. Is it convenient to sit? At this time, a strange voice sounded. Qin Hao looked over. It was a thin young man in a blue robe. Behind the young man, there was a girl with a white face, about 15 or 16 years old. Now, the lobby of the Qingyang building was crowded. Seeing that there were fewer people at Qin Hao's table, they came over and said embarrassedly, "It's okay." Qin Hao took Gooden back into his arms and left one side of the table open. "Thank you." The young man pulled the girl to sit down and said gratefully, "I am Tang Jingxian, and my sister is Tang Jingshu. Hello, big brothers." The girl nodded at Qin Hao and the others. Qin Hao said, "Yi Shuihan, Hao Zhixing." The two of them cupped their hands. "Brother Qin, Brother Yi, Brother Hao." Tang Jingxian cupped his hands. No. You can call me Brother Jiu." Little Jiu looked embarrassed and carefully looked at Qin Hao's face. He couldn't afford to be called Brother Hao. "Oh, Brother Jiu, are you here to participate in the 4 Clans tournament?" Tang Jingxian asked. "No." Qin Hao shook his head. It was his first time in Yuyang City, so he didn't know which 4 clans were in the city. The Imperial Lord has ordered the Red Flame Battle Camp to select 2 commanders from Yuyang City. Now, all the cultivators here are here to win the right to participate in the tournament. I misunderstood you. Tang Jingxian smiled. My 2 brothers and I are new to Yuyang City, so we are very unfamiliar with it. I hope Brother Tang can give us some advice. Qin Hao said politely. No, let's exchange some advice. Tang Jingxian also smiled. Big brother, are you really not here to win the right to participate? That's a pity. Tang Jingxue said. Oh, why is it a pity? Qin Hao asked. This time, the Imperial Lord has established the Red Flame Battle Camp, which belongs to the direct line of descent. They only listen to the Imperial Lord's orders. The candidates will enter the Red Flame Palace and accompany the Imperial Lord. Tang Jingxue said enviously. How powerful was the Red Flame Emperor? It was already a great honor to accompany him, not to mention the opportunity to receive guidance from the Imperial Lord. This was a good opportunity to reach the top in one step. Accompany the Imperial Lord? Qin Hao and Yi Shuihan looked at each other. They were worried about how to get close to the Red Flame Emperor, but they didn't expect the opportunity to come. Brother Qin, the Imperial Lord's selection of commanders is open to the entire Yuyang City on the surface. In fact, everyone knows that it can only be the disciples of the 4 clans. If you really want to, it's not too late. Tang Jingxian naturally saw that Qin Hao and the other two were extraordinary, so he kindly reminded them. Are there any conditions to participate? Qin Hao asked. There are no conditions. Strength is respected. Tang Jingxian replied. Then Brother Tang is prepared to participate. May I ask what cultivation level Brother Tang is at? Qin Hao said. This Jingxian is not talented. I just entered the immortal supremacy realm. Tang Jingxian said shamefully. Just entered the immortal supremacy realm. Yi Shuihan glanced at Tang Jingxian. According to Tang Jingshuan's strength, the rules of the competition were just so. Shuihan. Qin Hao pondered for a moment. I'm sorry. Yi Shuihan apologized. It's okay. Tang Jingxian knew that he wasn't strong enough, so it was normal for others to look down on him. I know you might be very powerful, but don't look down on my brother. My brother has never thought of competing for the position of commander or vice commander. Tang Jingxue was very angry. Jingxue, don't be rude. Tang Jingxian scolded. He couldn't see through Qin Hao's cultivation level. But Yi Shuihan and Little Jiu's immortal energy was rich and deep. Even if they deliberately restrained it, he could still feel a trace of difference. From this, he could determine that these three were intermediate immortal supremacies or even upper immortal supremacy geniuses. Chapter 1463. Brother Tang, you just became a celestial lord. Since you have no intention of competing for the position of commander, why do you want to participate? Qin Hao went back to the topic and asked. Because, Sai? Tang Jingxian sighed and said, My sister has a strange disease of fire and cold since she was a child. When it happens, her body sometimes feels like it's on fire, and sometimes it feels like it's on ice. In order to cure Jing Shui, I have to ask for a spot to represent the 4 clans in the battle. I don't dare to ask for the position of commander, but I'm satisfied with some rewards. The Red Flame Emperor selected talents from Yuyang City, and the 4 clans were his old subordinates. How could such a good thing fall into the hands of others? The cultivators of Yuyang City were well aware of this. Even so, they still wouldn't let go of the opportunity to perform. The cultivators participated for the 4 clans for 2 reasons. First, to get some rewards. Second, to perform well enough to attract the attention of the Red Flame Emperor. Then, they would enter the Red Flame camp and become a soldier under the Emperor. The Red Flame camp was a direct descendant and had a high status. It was better to work for the Emperor than to cultivate alone. Now, the 4 clans are preparing for the competition and recruiting famous masters. If Brother Qin wants to, you can join one of the clans and try to perform well enough to enter the Red Flame camp. Tang Jingxian and Qin Hao chatted happily and said a few more words. What do you think? Qin Hao asked Yi Shuihan and Little Nine. It's our honor to serve the Emperor. Yi Shuihan said. Big brother, we have been cultivating hard for many years. We must seize this opportunity to stand out. Little Nine clenched his fists and looked excited. He was acting for Tang Jingxian to see. Okay, then let's decide to participate. Qin Hao took a big gulp of wine. You are all passionate people. I happen to be in the Zhu clan and working for Zhu Rong. Why don't Brother Qin, Brother Yi, and Brother Nine come together? You can accompany me. Tang Jingxian invited. Thank you, Brother Tang. Qin Hao thanked him. You're welcome. I'll go find Zhu Rong and ask for a spot for the 3 of you. Tang Jingxian stood up happily. At this moment, there was a sudden commotion in the hall. All the cultivators in the hall stood up at the same time. The commotion was huge. Qin Hao turned his head and saw a tall warrior in a black raincoat stepping into the hall. His body was surrounded by wisps of black qi. His loose raincoat fluttered in the wind, accentuating his sturdy body. He gave off a tyrannical and dangerous aura. Ink Eagle, revered he actually came as well. A cultivator exclaimed in shock. With that said, another person stepped into the Azure Sun Building's lobby. This person was bare-chested and had a tall and sturdy figure. A few pieces of purple armor covered his shoulders and waist. On the armor, there were faint flashes of lightning. He was actually half a head taller than Ink Eagle and Revered Black. Very Vishnu 10. A martial artist said nervously. Who are they? Qin Hao asked Tang Jingxian. Ink Eagle, Revered He, and Vishnu Tien are very famous in Valley Sun City. Many geniuses have died in their hands. Tang Jingxian was also a little nervous. These two had immortal souls in their bodies and could be said to be at the peak of the immortal supremacy realm. The Battle of the Four Clans was about to begin. Their arrival here meant that they had also chosen to rely on the Zhu clan. As Tang Jingxian expected, in the next second, he saw a handsome young man slowly walking down from the top floor of the Azure Sun building and into the lobby. Behind the young man was a group of extremely powerful guards. It seemed that his status was not ordinary. Greetings, young Master Zhurong. The cultivators in the hall shouted in unison. Everyone, there's no need to be so polite. The young man smiled and walked in front of Ink Eagle, Revered He, and Vishnu Tien. The two of you are well known. Just now, when I was on the top floor of the 99th floor, I could feel the profound, immortal powers of the two of you. The Zhu clan is like a tiger that has grown wings with the help of the two of you. We will definitely win this battle. Young Master, you flatter us. Ink Eagle, Revered He, in a black raincoat smiled. It is my honor to win for young Master Zhurong. Vishnu Tien placed a hand in front of his chest as a sign of politeness. Ha, good. Quickly invite the two of you into the Azure Sun sky floor. Young Master Zhurong waved his hand. The so-called sky floor was above the 90th floor of the Azure Sun building. Normally, this height was not open to the public and only welcomed the nobles of the Red Flames Imperial City. However, the Battle of the Four Clans was very intense this time. In order to express the sincerity of the Zhu clan, they specially opened the sky floor of the Azure Sun building for the participants to rest. All expenses during this period were free. Is this the young Master Zhurong that Brother Tang mentioned? Qin Hao looked at Tang Jingxian. Yes. Tang Jingxian nodded. Young Master is now busy receiving Ink Eagle, Revered He, and Vishnu Tien. It is not convenient to disturb them. After a while, I will report to young Master. I will definitely not let Brother Qin and the other two go to waste. There's no hurry. Qin Hao smiled. Ink Eagle, Revered He, and Vishnu Tien were both 9th level immortal venerables. Furthermore, they could release strange forces. They were probably the immortal souls that Tang Jingxian mentioned, which were the essence soul cultivators of the outside world. However, now that a 9th level Yuan Venerate was standing in front of Qin Hao, he really did not take them seriously. At this moment, Zhurong was leading the two of them to the 90th floor of the Azure Sun building. Young Master, I am really sorry. The sky floor is full. I did not know that Revered He and Revered Lightning would be coming. It was my fault, the manager of the Azure Sun building said in a trembling voice. It's full? Zhurong frowned. It's been full. It has just been filled. The last room in the sky level has just been booked by two newcomers. They are the two over there. The manager's gaze swept across the hall. He quickly discovered Yi Shuehan and Little Nine's figures and pointed to them. Upon hearing that, Zhurong looked at Qin Hao's table unhappily. Young Master Zhurong. Seeing this, Tang Jingxian quickly stepped forward. Tang Jingxian, are those people your friends? Zhurong asked with a straight face. Although Tang Jingxian had an immortal soul, his immortal soul wasn't very strong, and his cultivation base was only at the low-grade immortal venerable realm. He could only stay on the lowest 3rd floor of the Azure Sun Tower, which was the 10th floor and below. Currently, there were more and more cultivators coming to serve the Zhu clan. Zhurong was considering whether he should replace Tang Jingxian. However, in the blink of an eye, he actually knew 3 friends who could stay on the sky floor. Tang Jingxian, you are not simple. Zhurong's expression was ugly. It was very difficult for people who did not know the Zhu clan to stay on the sky floor unless they paid an exorbitant amount of immortal stones. How could a poor wretch like Tang Jingxian know such an expert? Could Qin Hao and the other 2 be spies sent by the other 3 clans, secretly probing the Zhu clan's combat strength? Young Master, please don't misunderstand. I'm not very familiar with them. Oh, By the way, Brother Qin and the others came specially to fight for the Zhu clan. I hope young master can give them a chance, and give them 3 places. Tang Jingxian said in a low voice. Who do you think you are to strike just because you say so? Zhu Rong shouted. No, I just... All right, don't talk nonsense in front of me. Can't you see that I am busy? Steward, return the immortal stones to them and let them leave. Zhu Rong ordered. Young Master Zhu Rong, please don't be like this. Brother Qin and the other two's cultivation is not bad. They're all mid-grade immortal venerates. I asked you to shut up. Did you hear me? Zhu Rong glared. With revered hay and revered lightning, mid-grade immortal venerates were nothing. Brother Tang, what's going on? Qin Hao saw that Yu Zhu and Tang Jingxian seemed to be arguing and came forward. When Yi Shuihan saw this, he followed closely behind. You came at the right time. I want to receive revered hay and revered lightning. Give up the room. Zhu Rong's words were direct. Give up. Qin Hao looked at Yi Shuihan. I paid double the amount of immortal stones. Yi Shuihan said, How much? Zhu Rong asked coldly. 20 heaven-grade spirit stones. Yi Shuihan replied. This was very expensive in the outside world. Hua. Zhu Rong waved his hand casually, and a pile of 7-colored crystals fell to the ground. There are 30 pieces here. What do you mean? Yi Shuihan's expression turned cold. You don't understand? Pick up the immortal stones and leave. Zhu Rong said coldly. Bang! A loud sound echoed. Little Nine's palm pressed down, and the entire table was shattered into pieces. The dishes scattered all over the floor. Humiliation? They entered the illusory palace trial, and, as disciples of the divine palace, they were despised by these puppet-like dogs. Even if they were not disciples of the divine palace, in the outside world, how many people would dare to speak to Qin Hao and Yi Shuihan like this? Wah! Gooden held the drumstick and cried in fear. Don't cry, don't cry. Tang Jingxue picked up Gooden and came to Qin Hao and Tang Jingshuan's side. Oh, in this Yuyang city, there are people who dare to lose their temper with me. Zhu Rong glanced at Little Nine. Dong! Revered Ink Eagle took a step forward, his hawk-like sharp eyes fixed on Little Nine. From the other's aura, he felt a familiar dark power. Young Master Zhu Rong, we can go. But is there a need to do this? Qin Hao took Gooden from Tang Jingshue's arms. At this moment, although Gooden was still sobbing, he stopped crying. Then what do you think I should do to you? Kneel and ask you to leave? Zhu Rong said. Ha ha! All the martial artists in the hall laughed. Brother Qin, I'm sorry. Tang Jingshuan's face was full of shame. Before, he had promised not to bury the strength of Qin Hao and the others, but now. And you go with them. Zhu Rong pointed at Tang Jingshuan's nose. Tang Jingxian trembled. Young master, why? Are you blind? Revered Hay and Revered Thunder need 2 rooms. If you give up one, I'll kick someone from the heaven layer to your room. It's really troublesome. Zhu Rong took out some spirit stones and threw them at Tang Jingshuan's feet. It was only some earth-grade spirit stones, and the quality was very poor. Young Master Zhu Rong, you've gone too far. Tang Jingshue's eyes were slightly red. In order to treat her fire-cold disease, her brother sold everything and raised spirit stones to live in the Azure Sun building. He risked his life to participate in the battle for a chance to contribute to the Zhu clan. Now, Zhu Rong's casual words destroyed all of Tang Jingshuan's efforts. Hurry up, I'm very tired. If you don't want to leave, you can stay and serve me. Vishnu Tian twisted his neck and stared at Tang Jingshue's white face, licking his lips. Let's go. Tang Jingxian hurriedly pulled Tang Jingxue back a few steps. Then he bent down and picked up the inferior spirit stones scattered on the ground one by one. Brother. Looking at Tang Jingshuan's back, Tang Jingshue's tears couldn't help but roll down. Once upon a time, her brother was also a proud person. But for her, he gave up all of his dignity as a cultivator. Now, he was even kneeling at Zhu Rong's feet to pick up snacks. Jingxue, it's okay. Qin Hao's heart was inexplicably sour. He let go of Gooden, squatted down, and helped Tang Jingxian pick up. If it weren't for them, Tang Jingxian and his sister wouldn't be like this. Boss, let me do it. Boss, let me do it. Yi Shuihan and Little Nine saw this and bent down, competing to help. Chapter 1464. The cultivators in the hall smiled as they watched this scene. The Verdant Sun Tower was the property of a Zhu clan, and Zhu Rong forced them to leave. Although it might be unfair to Qin Hao and the others, it was normal. The four-clan competition was about to begin, and Revered He and Revered Thunder had joined the Zhu clan to strengthen Zhu Rong's team. How could he take Qin Hao and the others seriously? As for driving Tang Jingxian away, it was just a matter of convenience. Even without Qin Hao and the others, Zhu Rong wouldn't tolerate this pair of siblings. All right, picking up the spirit stones, Qin Hao smiled, picked up Gooden, and said, "Let's go." Okay. Everyone nodded and walked out of the Verdant Sun Tower. Are you worthy of cultivating the power of darkness? Suddenly, a voice was heard. Mo Ing and Revered He stared at little Jio's back with disdain. Dark cultivators were fierce and bloodthirsty. The pride and ruthlessness in their bones made them stronger than other cultivators. He adhered to the extreme style of dying together with the enemy rather than bowing to the strong. Because of this, other cultivators rarely dared to provoke dark cultivators. Little Jio cultivated the path of darkness and bowed his head for a few low-quality spirit stones, which made Revered He feel disdain. It really dirted his eyes and insulted the pride of dark cultivators. From today onwards, don't let me see you in Yuyang City. I find it disgusting. Revered He said. The sarcastic voice came from behind. Naturally, Little Jio could tell that the other party was talking to him. At this moment, blue veins appeared on his fists. The ignorant are fearless. Qin Hao patted Little Jio's shoulder. Little Jio took a deep breath and recovered his composure. He had cultivated to the immortal Emperor realm, and he shouldn't be disturbed by a revered immortal clown. Well said, the ignorant are fearless. Li Fun, admire your courage in saying this. At this moment, a mighty group of people stepped into the Azure Sun Tower from outside. They came in a menacing manner and walked in front of Zhu Rong, confronting the Zhu clan. The one who spoke was a young man with a noble expression. According to his tone, his status was not lower than Zhu Rong's. Young Master Li Fun of the Li clan. The cultivators in the hall could not help but ask. Li race, one of the four races. Li Fun was the son of the patriarch. Qin Hao glanced at Li Fun a few more times. However, Li Fun wasn't here for Qin Hao. He smiled and politely spoke to the Revered Black and Revered Lightning. Are the two of you willing to join my Li clan and fight for us? Li Fun, don't you think it's too much to speak like this in front of me? Zhu Rong was slightly angered. Li Fun ignored Zhu Rong and smiled as he looked at Mo Ing, Revered Black, and Vishnu Tan, waiting for them to make their choice. Or rather, to give them a chance to join the Li clan. This, Revered Black, was a little hesitant and did not know how to reply. Li Fun was also one of the four young masters. To reject his invitation was the same as looking down on the Li clan. Where did your pride go? Little Nine sneered. Humph. Revered Black stared at Little Nine and remembered this face. Then he apologized to Li Fun. Young Master Li Fun, since I came to the Azure Sun Tower, I have decided to join young Master Zhu Rong. I can only accept your invitation. Sorry. I'm sorry, young Master Li Fun. My choice is the same as Revered Black. Since Revered Black had taken the lead, Revered Lightning had nothing to fear. Did you hear that? Zhu Rong straightened his back and raised his head. Sure, I won't force you. I hope that your choice of Zhu Rong is correct. Li Fun smiled and left with his men. It was good that he had successfully invited Revered Black and Revered Lightning, but it didn't matter if they didn't come. He didn't lack experts under him. Today, Li Fun only came to annoy Zhu Rong. Do you all want to participate in the battle of the four clans? When he passed by Qin Hao, Li Fun stopped in his tracks. He remembered that Qin Hao had once said that the ignorant were fearless. Since Qin Hao dared to speak to Revered He in such a manner, then Li Fun ought to have some ability. Yes, Qin Hao said calmly. Since that's the case, I would like to invite you all to join my Li clan. I wonder if you are willing? Li Fan said. Tang Jingxian was overjoyed. The Li clan was tyrannical and wasn't any weaker than the Zhu clan. However, since Li Fan invited Qin Hao, Tang Jingxian didn't dare to say anything. Thank you, young Master Li Fan. We have the same intention. Since Li Fan was willing to take the initiative to invite them, Qin Hao felt that he should give them face. Haha, good. Follow me and leave this broken place. Let's go to Li Tian Pavilion. Li Fan laughed heartily. Qin Hao and the rest followed him out. Ha ha ha, Li Fan, those fellows are things that my Zhu clan has abandoned. You can take them to the Li clan. Zhu Rong's laughter could be heard from the Azure Sun Tower. Li Fan didn't care and went straight to the Li clan's Li Tian Pavilion. However, after walking for a while, he suddenly stopped and turned around to look at Qin Hao and the rest. You three, why are you still following us? One of the Li clan cultivators said with an unhappy expression. Qin Hao was stunned. Young Master Li Fan, do you have any sincerity in your words at the Azure Sun Tower? Sincerity? Li Fan smiled and nodded. Of course, but my sincerity is built on the foundation of strength. Understood. Qin Hao let out a sigh of relief. Li Fan meant that the Li clan didn't want trash. Next, Qin Hao gave Little Nine a look. Little Nine's body was suddenly surrounded by black smoke, like a monster emitting black smoke. He stepped out and rushed towards the Li clan cultivator. That Li clan cultivator was enraged. He roared and his body ignited in flames. The flames turned into dense tongues of fire and shot towards the black smoke. However, these tongues of fire disappeared immediately after coming into contact with the black smoke. They were useless against Little Nine. Then, the black smoke circled around the Li clan cultivator. That person screamed, and the flames were extinguished. His clothes were torn, and he fell to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Little Nine dispersed the black smoke, his expression cold as he stared at the defeated person. Interesting. Li Fan was a little surprised. This defeated cultivator was a Li clan cultivator that he had recruited. He had an immortal soul and was an 8th grade immortal supremacy. Although he didn't have time to release his immortal soul, the process itself was enough to prove that Little Nine was extraordinary. Moreover, he had defeated his opponent in one strike. Swoosh, swoosh. Another 2 figures quickly appeared. Qin Hao and Yi Xuehan attacked at the same time and rushed towards the 2 Li clan cultivators. Similarly, they didn't wait for their opponents to release their immortal souls and defeated their opponents in one strike. The process was clean and fast. Young Master Li Fan, do you have any sincerity now? Qin Hao asked coldly. Yes, I am full of sincerity. This time, Li Fan wasn't just surprised, he was pleasantly surprised. He looked at Qin Hao and the other 2 and couldn't help laughing heartily. Zhu Rong is actually willing to chase the 3 of you out of the Azure Sun building. I wonder who is the stupid one. Even though Qin Hao and the other 2 didn't use their immortal souls when they attacked, their opponents were all geniuses with immortal souls that Li Fan had recruited. Even if he used his but to guess, he could tell that Qin Hao and the other 2 weren't ordinary people. Li Fan went to the Azure Sun building today to test and poach revered hay and revered lightning. Of course, he didn't have much hope. Secondly, it was to disgust Zhu Rong, but he didn't expect that he would pick up 3 treasures for his clan. Brother Qin, aren't your cultivations intermediate immortal supremacies? Tang Jingxian asked softly with cold sweat on his face. I never said that I was an intermediate immortal supremacy. Qin Hao laughed. That's an upper immortal supremacy. No, you guys are peak immortal supremacies. Tang Jingxian was shocked. From the way Qin Hao and the other 2 fought, they could easily suppress the upper immortal supremacies of the Li clan. With such cultivation, they definitely had the qualifications to fight against revered hay and revered lightning. Tang Jingxian was nervous. He had never thought that Qin Hao and Yi Xuehan would be so strong. If he had known, he wouldn't have dared to sit on Qin Hao's table like that. Big brother Qin, big brother Yi, you guys are really strong. Tang Jingxiu said with admiration. It was rare to see someone with the same strength as revered hay and revered lightning to be so low-key and humble. Of course, The poor siblings didn't know that the people standing in front of them were 3 celestial emperors who had surpassed celestial venerables. Among them, Qin Hao, the celestial emperor, had the terrifying cultivation base to defeat the Scarlet Flame Realm Lord. It's Li Fen's fortune to meet you guys. Let's talk after we return to Li Qinga. Li Fen was in a good mood. He took out some spiritual stones and threw them to the 3 defeated Li clan cultivators. This meant that the 3 of them had lost the qualification to fight and were replaced by Qin Hao, Yi Shuihan, and Xiao Jiao. Thank you, young master. The 3 of them sighed and left after picking up the spiritual stones. Brother Tang, let's go. Qin Hao said. I won't go. Tang Jingxian shook his head. It was time to part ways with Qin Hao. When he met Qin Hao before, he felt that the difference in cultivation between them was about the same. But now, their identities were different. Tang Jingxian smiled bitterly in his heart. He was too naive. He had just advanced to the immortal venerable realm and wanted to fight for the 4 clans. In the end, he was mercilessly abandoned and humiliated by Zhu Rong. Now, Qin Hao and the other 2 cultivators he met were all peak immortal venerables. He was afraid that most of the experts recruited by the 4 clans were at the same level. Given his insignificant cultivation base, he couldn't participate in this battle anymore. Even if he was unwilling, he could only give up. Our boss asked you to follow, so just follow. Anyway, young Master Li Fen doesn't mind, right? Yi Shuihan grabbed Tang Jingshuan's arm tightly. It's just 2 more pairs of chopsticks. It's not a big deal. Li Fen said plainly. Of course, he would mind. Li Qinga wasn't a place where trash like Tang Jingxian could join. But for Qin Hao and the other 2, he could only give in. Let's go, Brother Tang. Jingxue is sick. Coincidentally, I know some medical skills. Let's see if I can cure her cold fire disease. Qin Hao looked at Tang Jingxue and rubbed her hair. This girl was pure and kind-hearted. She'd been hugging good in all this while. All right. Tang Jingxian didn't refuse anymore when he heard that Qin Hao knew medical skills. Peak Immortal Venerable Realm was very close to the Immortal Emperor Realm. Although he didn't have much hope for Qin Hao's medical skills, he could at least give a try. Li Qinga. It was the same as the verdant sun building of the Zhu clan. It was magnificent and grand. The interior was very luxurious and was supported by formation. After all, it was the iconic property of the Li clan. The only difference was that Li Qinga wasn't open to cultivators. Therefore, its reputation wasn't as good as the verdant sun building. At this moment, Qin Hao and his group, Tang Jingxian, and his sister were arranged by Li Fen to stay in Li Qinga. He purposely vacated 2 adjacent courtyards for them. There were still 3 days before the battle of the 4 clans. Therefore, they decided to stay here, in a courtyard where Qin Hao was. Little Nine was playing with Gooden. They were having a lot of fun. Tang Jingxue was sitting under a stone pavilion. She stretched out her jade-like arm. Opposite her, Qin Hao had a solemn expression. His warm fingers were placed on Tang Jingshue's pulse. A wisp of primordial qi flowed into her meridians and circled around her internal organs. Big Brother Qin, you really know a lot. Tang Jingshue's beautiful eyes stared at Qin Hao. This white-haired, tough face wasn't the type that was pleasing to the eye. However, the more she looked at him, the more she liked him, especially in terms of Qin Hao's temperament. It was easy for people to fall for him. In the future, you will think that I know more. Qin Hao joked. During the 2 days that he stayed with the siblings, Tang Jingshue's brother, Tang Jingxian, would often look for Qin Hao to talk about cultivation. Because Qin Hao's realm was high, Tang Jingxian, who had just entered the immortal venerable realm, benefited a lot from slight touch. Therefore, he admired and respected Qin Hao very much. But I was born with this fire-cold disease. When my family was still well off, my parents had looked for countless immortal Dao masters to treat me. However, Tang Jingshue's face flashed with loneliness. No one could cure her disease. Later, the Tang family encountered an accident and was destroyed by their enemies. The elders in the family risked their lives to help them escape. Now, only the 2 of them were left. Her disease had always been a burden to Tang Jingxian. Not only did it cost him money, It also hindered her brother's cultivation. Therefore, Tang Jingxue felt very guilty and thought that she was an unlucky person. Chapter 1465. No matter what, don't give up on yourself so easily. Maybe it's not as difficult as you think it is. Qin Hao retracted his palm and said with a smile. Tang Jingxue trembled. It's not too difficult to cure the fire-cold disease. Does that mean Qin Hao has a way to cure it? Did she hear it wrong? The fire-cold disease was born with you. It corrodes your internal organs and fuses into your blood. It's indeed difficult to cure it with medicine, but it's not without a cure. Give me some time, and I will find a way to cure you. Qin Hao consoled. His words inexplicably gave people a sense of trust. Really, unknowingly, tears flashed in Tang Jingshua's eyes. Qin Hao nodded with a smile. The fire-cold disease was indeed a little tricky. The competition between the four clans was imminent. He would help Leafin get the victory tomorrow and cure Tang Jingshua's fire-cold disease. Big brother Qin, you're really our benefactor. Tang Jingxue shed tears of joy. She had been waiting for this day for too long. She didn't want to be a burden to her brother anymore. At this moment, Qin Hao had let her see a glimmer of hope. Brother Qin. At this time, Tang Jingxian came in from outside. His face was full of worry, as if he had a lot on his mind. What's wrong? Qin Hao asked. The news of Revered Hay and Revered Lightning joining the Zhu clan has been spread. They are fighting for Zhu Rong. In addition, a few ruthless people have also entered the Azure Sun building. It's obvious that Zhu Rong has made up his mind. In addition, the Gong clan and the Winged clan have also spent a lot of money to invite a few immortal venerables from the outer city. All of them are peak immortal venerables. Their fame isn't inferior to Revered Hay and Revered Lightning. Currently, the outside world is abuzz with the news. The battle situation of the four clans this time will definitely be unprecedentedly intense. Every single person representing the four clans is extremely powerful. You, Brother Yi and Brother Jiu must be careful. Tang Jingxian said worriedly. You know quite a lot. Qin Hao smiled faintly. The so-called ruthless people and experts were just useless paper tigers that would be destroyed with a poke. Since Brother Qin has treated us siblings so well, Jingxian will naturally help you investigate and analyze the strength of your opponents. Brother Qin, I'm not joking. If you really can't do it, just give up. Tang Jingxian asked. Qin Hao was chivalrous and never abandoned him, and Tang Jingxue. In the past few days, he had been busy trying to cure Tang Jingshue's fire-cold syndrome. The war of the four clans was extremely risky. If Qin Hao was unfortunate enough to encounter a vicious and merciless person, the consequences would be dire. Don't worry, these two brothers of mine are also the strongest of the strong. Qin Hao smiled and said to Tang Jingxian, Brother Qin, I'm serious. Don't take it lightly. When Tang Jingxian saw Qin Hao's indifferent expression, he became a little anxious. When we left the Azure Sun building, do you remember what Revered Hay said? If he encounters ninth brother, he absolutely won't show mercy. Perfect, little nine is also thinking about him. Qin Hao stood up and patted Tang Jingshuan's shoulder. All right, don't be too nervous. Since I promised to treat Tang Jingxue, I won't let anything happen to me before curing her. Tang Jingshuan's persuasion was useless, and he nodded slightly. He was weak and could only do small things like inquire about information. In his heart, he silently prayed for Qin Hao, hoping that the gods and Buddhas could bless the three of them. The War of the Four Clans had been going on for a long time. It was once every 5 years, and had always been the most eye-catching event in Yuyang City. Coincidentally, it was this year when the Scarlet Flame Emperor was selecting talents. This year's War of the Four Clans would definitely be unprecedentedly fierce. Finally, the day arrived and the entire city was shaken. As soon as the sky brightened, Yuyang City instantly set off a wave of enthusiasm. Above the void, people flew in the air, rode on magic artifacts, or rode on demonic beasts. The vast crowd in the air and on the ground were all heading in the same direction. In the central area of Yuyang City, there was an ancient platform. It was the place where the War of the Four Clans took place. Qin Hao, Yi Shuihan, and the others set off from Li Tiange of the Li clan and followed Li Fun's team to the platform. In the void, the figures of immortal cultivators were everywhere, and they were getting denser and denser. We're here. That's Yuyang Balcony. The people of the Four Clans are all here. Tang Jingxian and his sister accompanied Qin Hao. At this moment, they pointed to a towering platform below and said, the platform was extremely vast. There was a depression in the center, and the surroundings were high. It was convenient for the audience to watch the battle. Today, in addition to Li Fun's team and Zhu Rong's team, there were also people from the Gong clan and the Wing clan. The Gong clan was good at forging. Their physical strength was extremely strong, and the magic treasures they forged were also extremely sharp. The great elder of the Gong clan was the chief armorer under the current emperor of Red Flame. The Wing clan was a demonic beast, the golden-winged giant pongbird. They were good at aerial combat, and their archery skills were superb. They were able to transform and created the Wing clan. The mount of the emperor of Red Sun was the current great elder of the Winged clan. As for the Zhu clan and the Li clan, they also had a deep relationship with the emperor of Red Flame. The two concubines in his harem were the daughters of the great elder of the Li clan and the great elder of the Zhu clan. Therefore, the two clans cultivated the flame spells of the emperor of Red Flame, and their celestial spells were very powerful. No matter how fierce the private conflicts between the Gong clan, the Wing clan, the Li clan, and the Zhu clan were, in essence, loyal subordinates of the emperor of Red Flame. Therefore, the commander and deputy commander of the Red Flame Battalion that he chose would be chosen from the four clans. As for who would be chosen, it would depend on the abilities of the four clans. Look, young master, Li Fen actually brought those people over. As Li Fen entered, Qin Hao, Yi Shuian, Lil Jiao, and Tang Jingxian, who were beside him, were naturally seen by the cultivators of the Zhu clan. At this moment, a cultivator of the Zhu clan pointed and laughed. The contempt on his face was self-evident. I don't know if Li Fun's brain has been bitten by a dog. He wants to use these pieces of trash to fight with me. Ridiculous. Zhu Rong narrowed his eyes and stared at Li Fun. Then he laughed. Young master, if the dark immortal beside the white-haired cultivator attacks, can you send me to fight? I want to twist his head off and throw it into the sky like a ball, Black Sovereign said. Revered Hayes said. Back in the Azure Sun Tower, Little Nine had replied to him with a sentence that he still remembered. You are just a middle-level immortal lord. Wouldn't fighting with him be a stain on your name, Black Sovereign? Zhu Rong said. Black Sovereign was very strong. Good steel should be used on the blade. Naturally, he should win against stronger opponents for him, and not waste it on Little Jiao. He is lucky, Black Sovereign said with hatred. Don't be angry. Revered Hay, don't be angry. Let me settle such a small matter for you. A cultivator in the Zhu clan's team who was sitting at the back said, Okay, kill him, and I will teach you a set of palm techniques of the Earth grade, Black Sovereign promised. Thank you. I will make him regret being born in this world, the cultivator said quickly. When he looked at Little Jiao again, his eyes were full of murderous intent. In the Yang training hall, the spectators arrived one after another. The auditorium was soon packed. It was obvious how big this competition of the four clans was. The crowd was so crowded that the training hall felt suffocating. However, no one dared to make a noise. It was full of solemnity and dignity. After all, the person who came to supervise today was a celestial emperor under Emperor Qian. His name was Emperor Kwa. Emperor Kwa, Emperor Gong, and Emperor Yi all followed Emperor Qian and supervised the entire Qian imperial realm for him. At this moment, as the people of the four clans all arrived, Emperor Kwa descended from the sky and landed majestically on the battle platform. He looked down at everyone. Greetings, Emperor Kwa. The contestant can challenge the representative of any clan until the other clan is completely wiped out. Behind Qin Hao, Tang Jingxian stood below the platform and quietly transmitted his voice. During this process, the core figures who led the four clans did not fight, such as Li Fun and Zhu Rong. Other than the core figures, the cultivators recruited by the four clans could challenge each other at will. The winning clan would then enter the second round. Of course, if a clan did not make it through the first round and all the cultivators recruited were eliminated, then only the core figure would be able to fight alone in the second round. In that case, he would face a situation where he had to fight against many people from the other three clans, which was very dangerous. For example, if all the cultivators of the Zhu clan were eliminated, only Zhu Rong would be left in the second round. The other core figures of the three clans would have cultivators accompanying them. At such a time, Zhu Rong's situation would have been ruined. The Zhu clan will send a competitor, Emperor Qua ordered. Last year, the Zhu clan had won first place, so they had priority. Suddenly, countless eyes looked at Zhu Rong's team. Including Zhu Rong, there were 10 people in total, 1 core figure and 9 assistants. The Zhu clan of the Qingyang building could be said to have a strong army. They had even recruited Lord He and Vishnu Tian. These two were very powerful figures. At this moment, Zhu Rong's eyes fell on Li Fun without hesitation. His intention was very obvious. Then, a figure stepped out from the Zhu clan's team and walked to the center of the platform. This person was wearing a beautiful blue robe. His long blue hair was very elegant, and he looked very handsome. Lan Xiujuan. Someone in the audience recognized this person. This Lan Xiujuan had a celestial soul and was at the 9th level of the Venerable Plane. Although he was not as strong as Lord He and Lord Lei, he was still a very powerful figure. Lan Xiujuan's eyes fell on the Li clan's team. Then, a surge of water condensed into a blue spear. He pointed the spear and said, "I challenge the Li clan. Water type, primordial spirit." Qin Hao's eyes widened. This Lan Xiujuan was playing with water in front of Yi Shuihan. She was really something. This spear would make Lan Xiujuan famous in the Crimson Emperor realm, and she would become the Crimson Emperor's beloved subordinate. Yi Shuihan would be her stepping stone. This is really boring to the extreme, Zhu Rong said lightly. He also didn't expect that the person sent by Leaf and wouldn't even put up a token resistance. The Zhu clan won the first battle so easily. It really didn't give him any sense of accomplishment. However, just as the spear was about to pierce Yi Shuihan's chest, his statue-like body suddenly made a move. Facing Lan Xiujuan's attack, Yi Shuihan wasn't afraid at all. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the spearhead directly. In the Yuan training hall, many spectators were surprised. Yi Shuihan's body was trapped by Lan Xiujuan's waves and could only be slaughtered like duckweed. Why was he still able to move? No one could answer. The battle was as fast as lightning. Just as the spear approached his chest, Yi Shuihan stretched out his palm. A mottled blue halo of light covered it. It seemed weak, but it was incomparably pure, like the source of water. There was a swoosh. The palm and the spear came into contact. Lan Xiujuan took the spear that was condensed from the immortal soul and disappeared. Only the sharp-eyed people saw that the spear turned into a stream of water and merged into Yi Shuihan's body. And Lan Xiujuan still maintained the cool posture of the spinning kick. The smile on his face was still in high spirits. However, his hand was already empty. In the next moment, a strong sense of danger came from the opposite side. A wave of will that was far more powerful than Lan Xiujuan's enveloped him, like the roar of the deep sea crushing his body. Lan Xiujuan was so scared that he suddenly trembled. His eyes were suddenly filled with fear. He seemed to see the figure opposite him. It was the water god standing in the sea, the water ancestor who controlled all sources. Boom! An incomparably heavy force was imprinted on his chest. Yi Shuihan took a step forward and slapped out with an invisible palm. The majestic water force hit Lan Xiujuan and sent him flying like a straw. His embarrassed and helpless figure spun in the air countless times. His hair was shave bald, and his appearance was too horrible to look at. He also let out a miserable howl and fell off the platform, shocking countless people on the spot. This, Zhu Rong turned around and looked down the platform. The twitching man on the ground was the first helper he had sent. Just a moment ago, Lan Xiujuan was still in high spirits and had a handsome and confident posture. After one palm strike, he turned bald. Chapter 1468. Kai Kuan felt a sense of danger from the attack. His expression changed as he communicated with his celestial soul, trying to absorb it into his body. But the air above was sealed by an absolute power. No matter how Kai Kuan tried to summon his celestial soul, the shadow of the fish could not break free from the seal of the ocean. It kept roaring violently. What a powerful sealing spell! Emperor Kua's eyes fell on Yi Shuihan from the battle platform. He could not see through the young man's cultivation level, and he found it very strange. Of course, he did not know that the power that suppressed Kai Kuan's celestial soul was not some mystical seal, but the suppression of Emperor Will. Because Yi Shuihan's level surpassed even Emperor Kua's, it was natural that he could not see through it. Roar of the Kuan. Kai Kuan was forced into a desperate situation and roared. Although he could not absorb the soul into his body, it did not prevent him from resonating with the Kuan and using the skills of his celestial soul. At that moment, Kai Kuan put his hands where his mouth was and drew on his spiritual power, roaring out ferocious sound waves. Along with this, the Kuan fish trapped in the water in the void also let out a wild roar. The two resonated, and a powerful force rushed down and merged with Kai Kuan's sound wave, forming a huge storm that blasted towards the trident. Pust! The trident pierced into the storm, and the latter was immediately shattered. But Yi Shuihan could not use his full strength, and the attack was not strong, so it was destroyed by the storm. Get down! Kai Kuan roared, and his eyes were bloodshot. The spiritual qi in his abdomen surged as he used the whale's breath, preparing to use the skill of his celestial soul again. Yi Shuihan would not waste any more time on him. He closed in, and a white hand reached out and pressed on Kai Kuan's chest, then pressed lightly. Boom! With a loud noise, Kai Kuan was sent flying. The sound of his sternum breaking was heard, and he spat out blood. He then fell off the platform. Yi Shuihan smiled frivolously and withdrew his hand. He turned and left, leaving the people of the Zhu clan to see his handsome back. Zhu Rong was shocked to see this scene. It was another palm strike, and he was killed on the spot. He looked at Yi Shuihan's back, and only now did he seriously recall everything that had happened in the Azure Sun Tower. His expression immediately became exceptionally ugly. The cultivator that he had personally humiliated and chased out actually possessed such powerful strength that he could consecutively eliminate 2 of the Azure Sun Tower's helpers. Furthermore, Kai Kuan's cultivation was second only to Honored Hay and Honored Lightning. Li Fun's smile naturally became more and more radiant. As Yi Shuihan walked back to the camp, Li Fun nodded repeatedly, the admiration in his eyes self-evident. He had still underestimated the strength of Qin, Hao, and the other 2. He flapped his wings, and with a monstrous wave of fire, he fell towards Qin Hao as fast as a meteor. Qin Hao smiled coldly. On his sword fingers, a dazzling light flickered, containing an extremely terrifying and sharp aura. Waves of flame will continuously merged into his sword fingers, and a formation diagram flashed in his hand. Then, an unbelievably fast sword light spurted out from the formation diagram, and like a fleeting shadow, it pierced through Zhu Zheng's chest. Before he could attack, Qin Hao's sword fell to the ground. Ah! Zhu Zheng's blood-curdling screams rang out from the platform. He had only suffered one sword strike, but in his screams, it was as if he had been cruelly pierced through by thousands of sharp swords. No one knew what happened to Zhu Zhang's body after that sword strike. When he fell, his body was covered with sword wounds, and many of his life meridians had been mercilessly pierced, and he had become a cripple. *T. This is the first time I've merged the Flame Slaughter Sky Destruction Matrix into my sword will, and I still can't control it well. Qin Hao sighed. Zhu Zhang was unlucky, but Uncle Yunyi's way of guiding the Matrix was indeed fierce. How is this possible? Zhu Rong found it hard to believe. It was just a sword will, and Zhu Zhang had fallen to such a state. Yi Shuihan had fought twice, and his two palms had established his position as a powerful figure. Now, this white-haired cultivator was also ridiculously powerful. What a powerful guy. Zhu Jimei, who had been arrogant before, clenched her fists tightly. Zhu Zhang's strength was no weaker than hers, and yet he had been unable to withstand even one sword strike. It seemed that only Lord He and Lord Thunder could suppress this white-haired cultivator. Furthermore, if they wanted to defeat him, even Lord Thunder and Lord He would have to pay a heavy price. Zhu Zhang cultivated the Yan Emperor's mantra bestowed by the Emperor, and yet it was not as powerful as the white-haired cultivator's fire spells. What soul skill did he use in that sword strike? At that moment, Emperor Kwa saw what had happened, and his expression became serious. If it was said that Qin Hao had not used his celestial soul, Emperor Kwa would not believe it. That sword strike must have been an extremely powerful celestial soul skill. Furthermore, Qin Hao's celestial soul was definitely of the fire type. Zhu Zhang has lost. Emperor Kwa looked at Qin Hao a few more times, committing his face to memory. A talent who could break the Emperor's mantra must be recruited into the Red Flame camp, even though that mantra was only the Emperor's weakest Earth-level mantra. Brother Qin, you are amazing. Li Fen saw that Qin Hao had returned unscathed and was overjoyed. Qin Hao smiled and said nothing. That battle was only the first time he had channeled the power of the Matrix into the Jinghong sword technique. He had not expected it to be so powerful.